Welcome on the news. Let's start by talking about our cocoa fortunes. And it's a tale of uncertainty among staff of Ghana's biggest indigenous cocoa buying company, the PBC, as the company continues to post huge revenue losses. According to its audited reports for the year 2022, the company lost 1.9 billion Ghana cedis within a period of 4 years. In our latest Hotline documentary, PBC Troubles, the JoyNews investigative desk explores what might be accounting for the steep decline in PBC market shares from 30.88% in 2016 to 8% in 2021.
In August 2022, a circular copied all staff indicated that payment of salaries would delay due to the current financial challenges facing the company. When we spoke to the staff who pleaded anonymity in November 2022, he told JoyNews their salaries delayed for 3 months last year. It was not only difficult for many to fend for themselves, but their families as well.
Staff salary, they were owing us 3 months, but currently they've paid the 3 months. But as we speak, we don't know when our next salary payment is coming, and we have no idea.
He said it was now difficult for staff to access welfare loans from the company, which wasn't the norm in recent past.
Okay, the welfare fund is a revolving fund, so they wrote to us that there are no funds available, so nobody should apply for welfare loan. But with regards to the tier 3, we have paid, it is our money, and we have contributed, and it is 10 years now. And the agreement was that when it is 10 years, they have to pay all the monies to us. But it is 10 years now, and they are refusing to release the funds to us, which is making all the staffs, every staff is agitating. Every staff is agitating about this tier 3.
So dire is the financial situation that PBC suspended the intake of national service personnel for the 2022-2023 year. In a circular cited by JoyNews, the Human Resource Manager, William AUC, cited the current financial challenges of the company as the reason. In January 2022, PBC wrote to the Ministry of Employment about its intention to restructure the company, including downsizing its staff. It cited the prevailing financial and operational downturn, making it difficult to pay staff and meet its obligations to stakeholders. It said the staff who would be affected by the downsizing are those without establishment. Our sources suggest that when CocoaBoard secured the cocoa syndicated loan last year, it loaned PBC with an estimated 350 million Ghana cedis. Management used 50 million cedis to cover staff remuneration and other administrative expenses. The national projection PBC set for itself for the 2022-2023 main crop season was to purchase 170,000 tons of cocoa. But with the limited funds in PBC's account, this target remains a pipe dream and leaves staff in another boat of uncertainty on what fate hangs on the survival of PBC and possible payment of their remuneration.
About 4 years in me, baby, shares no market share no former echo, a former echo. Because woman you woman bam so woman you more jumano. Appointees, government appointees na do woman. It will go wow back who call the jumano crowd, ni mo we man see na betra so wonya juma. The market share no the company by woman to me nka anokre no enchire pieces na ye no wo mo ye adwuma na ye nso ye ne ne farmers ne tie kurase ho and you farmers ne situation ke duru brebi a ye ne ye boa wo company investor ma see em farmer farmers ye ye tibi kopelo ne ye wusa ho chire bi mu no ati see ye boa farmers ne kakra won tezo won beti koko no October no wo mo twia ebi dia kura tibi koba 1 year na farmers dey Akakpo for Nika. And so company ni mo hwe wo mo physical kura. Sika ni to go kura. Wo mo nya bi ma. E be na bo nya bi dia abobosi. enti yɛ no wɔdɔ a yɛwɔ ma company no yɛtumi hu sɛ nyɛ no bi ɛna mpanimfoɔ no ɛwɔ ma company no wɔ soro hɔ no wɔn da sɛ wɔn sika na wɔn di na ne hia.
PBC Troubles airs on Monday, the 17th of April on the Super Morning Show at 8:30 a.m. and on the JoyNews channel at 8:30 p.m. On now to our next story. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta says Ghana's hopes of securing an IMF board approval latest by May. Securing this will, however, require meeting the critical targets of bringing debt to GDP ratio to 55% by 2028 and reducing the country's external debt servicing ratio. Achieving these can, however, prove challenging, as Mr. Ofori-Atta says. The nation has so far only been able to restructure about $1.6 billion of its $30.5 billion external debt.
The total stock of external debt amounted to $30.5 billion. So far, we've structured the equivalent of $1.6 billion belonging to the non-resident holders of domestic debt. We have $8.8 billion that are held by multilateral development banks and therefore are not being restructured. The remainder of the external debt amounting to $20 billion encompasses $14.6 billion of commercial debt and $5.4 billion of bilateral debt treated under the common framework. We are reaching out to all our external commercial creditors because you are an integral part of the solution to our current economic and financial crisis. We value the long-standing relationships we have with you and appreciate the continuous support you have provided to Ghana, and we look forward to that relationship continuing. So our prime objective is to restore public debt sustainability and ensure a full financing of the program. Two key conditions for the IMF board to approve the program and proceed with a much-needed financial disbursement under an extended credit facility. This will require, among other targets, bringing the ratio of the present value of our total public debt to GDP to 55% by 2028 and bringing our external debt service to revenue ratio below 18% from 2028. This will also require securing enough financial assistance from our development partners to meet our gross financing needs over the period of the program. This will be of paramount importance to ensure the IMF program is fully funded.
Well, tied to that, meanwhile, the managing director of the International Monetary Fund, Kristalina Georgieva, says she will personally intervene to enable Ghana reach a deal with her creditors as crucial talks take center stage ahead of the consideration of a $3 billion bailout for Ghana.
We have been in constant contact with the authorities in Ghana. We have worked very hard and very swiftly to have the program for Ghana, $3 billion support program for Ghana in place. We have been urging Ghana's creditors to act swiftly. My appreciation for also the proactive role of the Minister of Finance of Ghana in reaching out to creditors. We are expecting that next week there will be discussions among creditors, and I can tell you that I use every opportunity myself to urge them to act swiftly. Let's remember that Ghana for a long time has done really well to tap markets to finance its growth path. It has been like all innocent bystanders hit by COVID, hit by the war in Ukraine, and it has complicated domestically the ability to finance the budget. So a country that has long track record of sound macroeconomic management ought to be supported to return to to markets. So our program is a bridge for Ghana, and to tell you the truth, I'm actually quite optimistic. I think Ghana is going to move. The creditors are going to move, and we are going to move swiftly. So I guess the short answer to you is stay tuned and stay positive.
Now, in our next story, thousands of structures sited in the way of a high-tension voltage transmission line are being demolished in the Ashanti region. The exercise, which has affected some residential, commercial, and religious structures and buildings, is to pave the way for the construction or reconstruction instead of the 161 kilovolt Konongo-Kumasi high-tension line. The high voltage line has not seen any major renovation works since its construction 62 years ago. Oheming Tewe of our security desk now reports.
Informers since last year around June, that they are going to do some decongestion exercise. Though it's going to affect me, but there's nothing I can do, because most of the times there was a canopy outside. Now we've removed the canopy. So when it's raining, the rain, it beats my customers. So those who usually sit under the canopy, they have to come inside. And not all of them are good people. Some of them, if you don't watch them very well, they are going to steal your money. So it has affected me. So, but there's nothing I can do, since it is going to benefit the whole nation.
Any insurance dear Bremi, because as a mere Mijina High, my laundries now high my employ in Kwalabe 15. And in Kwalabe 15, Sansun way bar, Ebekan Kwalano, Ebekami, Yerma, Ebeka Binumo so Yermo. Nemum Domobeye and Omudibim, if you say, a Bayan Sassi, and a Viera Sassu Trano. Yenino, baby, no, I bet 19 ebe pechi. Na kwanya womo fashion municipal, Edin Como, Ebo do roa hanyinano, Yenino, Ubiati, no mo buy and sono, or man beye ni gidi. Te said the omopeno, Akosum Bonasino, Omuswa Wasian, or Mobe Wayano for into wa Wasian free, Asie, said a beye Wayano, or Muchuya, a dear sum diaba. The idea one, and Oje, if we say. Asiana de ne da no wote wono obetwe ne waya eye Ghana mu nyina ne ye pe enyinam kanea amayen ne ye tena ho ne ye se do mo ye ne enya na che se ye di Ghana man ehwambo.
Persons living with disabilities will benefit from health-related programs by the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology MasterCard Foundation Health Collaborative. Head of the health ecosystem under the Health Collaborative, Dr. Joseph Owusu, says these programs are designed to equip them to increase their job prospects in the health sector. There is more in this report.
The KNUST MasterCard Health Collaborative organized stakeholder engagement for persons with disabilities. This stakeholder engagement aimed at assisting persons with disabilities to be able to access decent, dignified, and fulfilling jobs in the health sector through acquisition of knowledge and skills. The programs include health communication agents, medicine counter assistants, health information management, medical laboratory sciences, and phlebotomy. Dr. Owusu indicated that once they go through these programs and acquire the requisite skills and knowledge, there's a possibility for them to access employment in the health sector.
It's come to MasterCard under the health ecosystem. We have earmarked an activity for persons with disability. And here we are just trying to equip these people with knowledge, experience, and skills so that they can be employable in the health sector. Basically, we have earmarked about 5 programs that they are going to be enrolled on. Such as these programs include medicine counter assistant, phlebotomy, health information management, and then lab technician. So these are the programs that we have earmarked for them. So once they go through this program, we are sure that once they get the requisite skills and knowledge, they will be able to access employment in the health sector. This program will start, if all things go on well, in the next 3 months, we will enroll our first cohorts into certain colleges we have identified, and they partner with KNUST.
Some of the participants spoke with JoyNews.
Well, this MasterCard program is a very good initiative on behalf of PWDs across the country, because for people with disability to gain education and hold various degrees without education, MasterCard has done a whole lot for giving such a scholarship to PWDs to acquire or climb the ladder to acquire other opportunities for them to hold in future. Because one cannot live alone. Because once you have gained the education, acquired the skill or the backup from MasterCard, it's a right step in the direction that you are climbing the ladder, you have gotten another opportunity to enhance
the health communication, that one, all the disability except children of intellectual disability. Apart from those guys, all the disability group can take advantage and it will benefit us. On the over-the-counter drugs dispensation, that what we call drug, that area too is a good initiative.
Reporting for JoyNews, Kwesi.
It's a wrap for the news, but the news review comes up shortly. Do stay with us. Well, thank you for staying with us. Time now for the news review, and I have one of my culprits here with me. He's my partner in mischief. In fact, I dare say this person is more mischievous than I am. But you will soon find out who this person is. He's staring at me from my left, but he has nothing to say for now because the camera is on me. Anyway, thank you for joining us. This segment is brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. They're offering you free prostate screening, female fertility screening. Just make tracks to Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. And you can find them here in Accra at Spintex opposite the Shell signboard. They are also in Kumasi, Kronum, Abuehia behind the Angel Educational Complex. Then there is Takrade, Anaji State. There is Techiman, Hanswa, Esiama, and Nzaba. And of course, again, here in the Greater Accra region, they can be found in Tema Community 22. If you'd like to call them, these are the numbers to call. 0244 867 068. 0244 867 068. You could also call 0274 234 321. 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. But only the start of the news review right here on the AM show. Now, my partner in mischief, you can call him Jack, not John Ejekum Kufuor, no, definitely. Joseph Akakpo, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Bernice.
I actually never realized, you know, sometimes I'm so spontaneous, things come. I actually never realized your initials were the same as the former president's. John Ejekum Kufuor, Joseph Akakpo. Okay, so it's actually a B. Okay. So, yeah. I mean, so my mind was just playing games with me. Do you have a K name?
Yeah, Kofi.
Kofi. It still works.
Bring Kofi to the end.
Joseph Akakpo.
That's strange.
That's
strange.
Anyway, so it's been quite a week we've had so far. I saw you scribbling quite a lot right before we got on air. What mischief have you been up to?
I don't know.
I was here academic.
Yes, it's academic. I was looking at a few issues bordering on citizenship in general.
I see. Okay. Maybe when you're done with with your ruminations, you can share with us what your thoughts are on citizenship in Ghana. But before we get into this, I always do this on a Friday. What has been, your major story over the last week? One or two that you feel have been really important, have made the waves, or for you, sometimes they may not have been so popular, but it's a standout story for you. What would that story or two be?
I think one will obviously be the IMF issues, as to which other thing to add that I'm not too sure about. But I mean, I picked the IMF issues because of where we find ourselves currently. I mean, very tough times. I think I know what else to add. The fuel shortage that happened
on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And we spoke about it on Wednesday.
Yeah, so yeah, that is also another one for me. But on the IMF one, I mean, like I was saying, it's because of where we find ourselves in very tough times, and having to hear the finance minister yesterday make a pitch to investors and more or less to try and get back the confidence in the Ghanaian economy. And yesterday I listened to the IMF chief, and listening to her was quite interesting in that she talked about how the IMF, and she believes that Ghana has generally been a country that has been managed properly, except the last few years that she says external shocks has led us to where.
That has been her rhetoric since I interviewed her, and since, but you know the interesting thing, she added something at that time that made me realize probably why Ghana may get the treatment it's getting. She said that, look, the stability of the sub-region, security-wise and otherwise, is hinged on Ghana, so to speak. And you realize that we've had a number of putches, military putches, and then coup d'etats and the rest. So if anything should happen to Ghana, you can tell what the ripple effect would be. We're like some stable force in the middle, holding everything together. And so some of these powers and institutions would have good cause to want us not to crumble, because if you crumble economically, then you're inviting terrorists, insurgents. And if insurgency comes in, then your democracy could be thrown out the window. And then, so if you look at it carefully,
I mean, in simple
there
terms,
are different interests, not necessarily the fact that we have done anything extraordinary.
So in simple terms, more or less like we are good boys in the sub-region.
Exactly.
Everyone expects to lend a helping hand to us to enable us to continue to be that good boy and that be that shining example.
Be that obedient boy. When they say jump, you ask how high.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So that is what, I mean, for me, stood out for me as one of the stories, and we'll see how that goes. The new date we are hearing is latest by May, so we'll see how that goes. Then the fuel shortage, I mean, very unfortunate. Guel explains that is as a result of supply challenges. We saw some who had tried to suggest or make a connection with the situation to the gold for oil policy, among other things. But we have been told that was going to be resolved within the next 48 hours. So by now, we expect that the fuel should be available. I mean, I don't know what your picks were.
I mean, these are some of the major ones that have come to the fore. The Brian Champon one is, of course, now it's been quite a number of days. But what I would take from there is the flip-flop, the seesaw between the NDC and the MPP. And, if this one's, you say that this person should be arrested, okay, then let's go back and retrospectively, you get it. How about these other people? How about the former president, John Mahama? How about Esiedun Ketia and others? I mean, if we wanted to do that, we would go as far back as the inception of the Fourth Republic. What I think, though, is that whatever the case may be, these two parties should move away from talk, rhetoric that could trigger a spark. Because we've seen, like in many countries, in Kenya, a beacon of democracy in East Africa, who thought would have seen the scenes that happened there over some 14 plus years ago, where there was chaos there? Who thought? In Rwanda, who thought? So that little spark, if you can avoid it, because without that spark, there'll be no fire. I have always said that the two of them should just avoid the rhetoric. You remember when we had the anti-vigilante group thing? You get it? Yeah. I don't know how we can get our political parties to toe that line, to stay within a certain box, at least when it comes to this, that if you spew rhetoric like this, you'll be held liable, regardless of whether you're in power or you are not, this and that. Because look, the truth is, because of our executive system, where the president is appointing the IGP and all of these security operatives, it becomes very difficult sometimes for some of them to put their foot down and say, you are within the ruling administration, whether NDC or MPP, but this kind of rhetoric is inimical to the fortunes of the state. We are arresting you for this. Maybe sometimes not to incarcerate the person forever or process the person for court, but for shady reasons. You understand? Yeah, I understand. But you will never see that on a certain front because of the politics. And
to buttress your earlier point, I mean, I think the political parties have a key role to play in all of this. I mean, there are elders within both parties. There should be someone who should be able to say that, look, Ben, what you said, I don't think it was in
poor taste.
You should say such things. I mean, what they don't seem to understand is the fact that they control a following. And so when you say to people that 2024 is going to be boot for boot or do or die, or that 2024 will not hand over power to MPP or hand over power to NDC, this is the reason why when you go to the polling station and that MPP member, the results are declared and doesn't go the way that he thinks it should go, he decides that he's not going to allow the peace that is being enjoyed at that station to be. He wants to take the ballot box, wants to push someone away, and it results in...
Based on what you have said.
Exactly.
Because these people, like it or not, some of these people hold on to your every word. They take it as the truth, the gospel.
Yeah.
That's what these people don't realize.
And if you remember, even post the 2020 polls, if you recall, there was a number of days when some supporters of the NDC, they pitched camp some few meters away from the Electoral Commission office. They were there for a while. I remember the NDC MPs also marched towards that place. They were there for a while. It took a number of days till the leader of the party and other key party functionaries had indicated that they should move away before they eventually went. I mean, that is the power and control that such individuals wield, and we expect politicians to bring that to bear in their communication. I mean, it's a contest of ideas. Unfortunately, in our situation, they take us for granted in that both political parties will go into the 2024 elections with at least 40% of the votes on their side. And so they don't really care about the bulk of us, because the bulk of us are really either with them or against them, 40-40. So they are looking at just a few people who will now, what we call the swing voters, who decide which line it goes.
And if you consider that, according to that report by Cordeo on the EC, which is another troubling point, that the image or trust in the EC has plummeted from 48% in 2004 to 10% in 2022.
Yeah.
Then you see that really we are on the precipice. We shouldn't be playing with. You see, I always say, Akakpo, that I have lived through war. I've survived two of them. One as a tiny tot, the other one I saw what was happening in Liberia. If you've seen some of these things, you realize that it takes very little.
Yeah.
It takes some reckless comments. It takes some foul actions. It takes some ethnic group feeling disadvantaged, spited, disregarded. Some little things become monstrous problems. And it takes, look at Liberia, look at how long it's taken them. And still, it's never fully recovered.
And you see the line of conversation we've been having post-2020. So 2020, there was an election petition that went to court. After that, the judiciary was basically attacked so much so that some persons feel that 2024, if they disagree with the results, they are not going to go to the judiciary. I mean, that in itself sets the stage for what we could have a sense of what could potentially happen, because it will mean that what will be the other option? What will be the other option? If you don't want to go to the court anymore, what will be the other option? Are you going to just merely be vigilant at the polling station? If you're at the polling station, they declare the results against you, what are you going to do? It's still the legal process that you ought to use. So, I mean, we just have to be mindful and urge our political leaders and political party members. See, trust me, those who are going to pour on the streets, mostly will not see the politicians, their children there. I mean, it's you and I, the normal people, who we are the ones who tend to go. The ones that when you have a problem, I mean, you are not going to, I mean, be able to even take off yourself or take yourself out of that situation.
And that is reflected in a comment I just see in the live feed. Aaron Babako Komisa says, most Ghanaians are tired of these political party and their politics. Today it's about political party A, and the next moment or hour it's about political party B. But still, our economic condition gets worse and is worsening, and nothing to write home about. My point is that let's all rally around economic policies that can change our livelihoods. That is 1D, 1F, or something else, and put the political gymnastics behind us for a better tomorrow. Well, anyway, we pray for that.
Yeah.
We pray for that. We pray our political parties will grow up and live up to expectation. But this morning, Akakpo, I have the Daily Graphic, Ghanaian Times, the Finder, and the Daily Statesman. We'll see how many time will allow us to get into. Which papers do you have?
I have just the Daily Guide for now.
The Daily Guide for now. Okay, you add the Daily Statesman.
Yeah.
Aha, so we can, or in fact, you know what? Let's do a little switcheroo. Let me do the Statesman, you do the Ghanaian Times. Okay. I know there are stories in there that you would likely want to take. So let's start with the Ghanaian Times, if you don't mind.
Yes, the front page has this other story. We actually put that story out yesterday. Health alert, new deadly mosquito found transmits malaria parasites that pose greatest risk of severe illness and death. That's according to the Ghana Health Service.
And I hear there are two types of whatever contagions and its plasmodium has a certain characteristic, and you can use insecticides and others against it, and it's very resistant. And I'm like, hey,
in fact,
this one, they're mosquito macho.
Yeah, in fact,
mosquito macho.
The story is on page 11 of the Times. It says the Anopheles stephensi can practically breed in almost all sources of water, which is not the traditional breeding sites of the common Anopheles species. It survives in extremely high temperatures during the dry season when malaria transmission usually declines. So that is also very problematic because they are saying that ordinarily during the dry season, malaria transmission declines, but this particular type is able to survive in those high temperatures.
Yeah.
So at the time that his colleagues know they are not surviving and they are dead, he is still around. It is known to be very invasive, spread fast, and adaptive to a myriad of climatic conditions, and shown to be resistant to multiple insecticide classes in many locations, posing control challenges in its control. And so far, we are told that they found some at Tuba and Dansoman here in Accra. And so, very worrying. But there's some good news.
And the rate of proliferation, that is also a worry. The way they can quickly procreate.
Yeah.
So
but
that also creates
a bit of good news connected to that. We have approved the Oxford vaccine.
Yeah, that has been, in the news for some days now.
Yeah. I think I saw that in one of the papers.
I think we are the first in Africa to test that vaccine.
So that story is actually in the Daily Guide, page 6 of the Daily Guide. So
we can just tie it in.
They said the Ghana Food and Drugs Authority has granted full national license for the R21 Matrix M malaria vaccine developed by the University of Oxford. The clearance procured, manufactured through an adjuvant technology from Novavax. We are told that the license holder for the vaccine is the first in any country. With the approval of the vaccine, children aged 5 to 36 months, the age group at highest risk of death from malaria, can receive the vaccine. And so the FDA CEO at a press briefing indicated that the evaluation and approval process considered the safety, immunogenicity, and efficacy data generated from 5 main clinical trials conducted in the United Kingdom, Kenya, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Tanzania. I know we're doing some trials, but it doesn't make reference to trials of this particular drug. But yes, it's been approved by the FDA. And so that is it on the malaria situation. But some other stories on the front page of the Ghanaian Times. Quickly, Ghana South Assembly Task Force members defy order. Ghana expects IMF loan approval by June. And traders jailed 6 years for human trafficking and aiding prostitution. The back page has the story about the rehabilitation of the Kumawu Raso Efidrasi Joabin Road begins.
Yes, but on that, let me see, the story concerning, the IMF deal. We've been told variously that it would be in May, and now we're being told in June. Look, yesterday I engaged Professor Mensah of the University of Ghana Business School, Lord Mensah, among others. This is a slope that we must go down very carefully, looking at some of those dynamics. And today I'll be sharing them with you in my blunt thoughts. The IMF and others may be giving their backing. We're hoping that China will play ball and come along with its 1.7 billion that we owe. But if you look at our figures and what we have to do, and how we even have to bring our debt to GDP ratio to about 55% by 2028, among others. It's a tall order. Mind you, other countries, even Zambia and the rest, some of the countries that have even got deals, some went through certain levels and they still hadn't got money, so to speak, because there are certain other processes that must be triggered before you actually get your first tranche. It's not even going to be like 3 billion coming into our accounts.
And even on the debt restructuring aspects, the external one, 30.5 billion, we've only done just $1 billion.
We've done about 1.6 billion out of 35 billion. 35.5 billion.
Yes, even though the minister indicated that there is some 8 billion that they don't intend to restructure.
Right.
So it means that some 20 billion is outstanding that
20 plus billion
that we have to deal with. And so the question remains that, is it a case that we are going to get some commitment that will enable us to get the board approval so that we attempt to do that? Because we've been working at it for months and we've done just 1 billion. And so, I am leaning towards the possibility that maybe the minister is getting a sense that we are going to get a commitment that we can take to the IMF.
The Paris Club has met. The Chinese, we've had meetings with them. we're just hoping that, because no creditor really wants you to default on your debt. They give you the money in hope of, they're like venture capitalists. When they also, invest their capital, they want the right returns at the right time. You get it? So it's a bit of a...
once you have challenges, they are obviously open to you giving them terms that are favorable to enable them access as well.
Exactly. They are not necessarily, here's the fact, they are not necessarily looking at your interest.
Yeah.
They are considering their interest, but only trying to be magnanimous so that, because in the end, if they also push us to a certain brick wall, a cul-de-sac, if you like, it means that they may end up losing their money altogether, which is what nobody wants.
There will simply be a default, and they will have to now go through the process to attempt to enforce judgment, among other things.
But on the international front, the Ghanaian Times usually has some interesting stories. I think on page 5 or page 3 or so. We could check out what stories there are there before we move on to another paper.
Yeah, there's this story about Egypt accusing Ethiopia of buying time in their dispute over the Nile Dam, and Kenya MPs amend rule over prosecuting UK troops, and tension grows as Sudan's army blames rival force of mobilizing. So we are told that the Sudanese army has warned that the country's biggest paramilitary group is mobilizing troops in cities across the country. A statement issued in the early hours of Thursday, the military accused the rapid support forces of clearly breaking the law. There are growing fears of a confrontation between the two sides. The RSF leader, Mohamed Hamdan Dagolo, who played a key role when the army seized power in June 2021. So you can see what others are talking about in other countries.
And this story particularly is interesting. Kenyan MPs amend rule over prosecuting UK troops. You remember there was an incident where apparently a Kenyan woman was killed and hidden in a cistern or a well or something of the sort, purportedly by UK troops. And so now, I don't know whether you could take a bit of that story.
Yes, we can. So the Kenyan members of parliament have voted to amend a defense agreement with Britain after allegations that troops training there committed serious crimes. It means that UK soldiers could be tried for murder, amongst other grave offenses committed against Kenyans in Kenya. It comes after a lack of progress in getting justice for the 2012 murder of a young woman, Agnes Wanjiru, who went missing after she was seen walking out of a Kenyan bar with British soldiers. The 21-year-old's body was later found in a septic tank at a hotel nearly 3 months later. So no one has been brought to justice, and the UK Defense Ministry has insisted it has been cooperating with Kenyan authorities. And so that story is the context for the decision that when there are grave crimes committed against Kenyans in Kenya, so no longer going to apply the defense agreement that they had, they'll rather allow for the prosecution of those individuals.
And the catchphrase or wording there, grave crimes.
Yeah.
So it's not just anything.
No, so
but
murder
something like murder, exactly, comes with a certain weight, or even rape.
Yeah.
Let's get into the Daily Graphic newspaper now. IMF bailout, 3 billion lands in May. Sources. And I like how sometimes 3 billion lands in May. Anyway, so Ghana is set to secure a final approval for its $3 billion bailout program from the International Monetary Fund next month. Two officials with deep insights into the talks have told the Daily Graphic. They explained that the positive development came after the country tapped into the goodwill of the IMF and key bilateral creditors to fast-track the debt restructuring process. They said financial assurance from bilateral creditors, which is the last hurdle for the country, was due later this month to pave the way for the request to be presented before the IMF Executive Board in Washington, D.C., United States, for consideration and approval next month. I would honestly wish, Joseph, that we would stop putting out deadlines and by this and by that. We've done it so many times, even with our own domestic debt exchange program. So many times, and we failed.
And interesting.
I don't know about, and it's even more complicated on the external front. People would say that the domestic front was more complicated because of, but on the external front, with what we are seeing, I think it is even more complicated. There's no hard and fast set in stone guarantee. Do you get it? So I would have approached this with some caution. Look, we're hoping to get this, maybe you could say by the end of this quarter or something. If you get it earlier, it works. But this whole rhetoric about May, which is what I started hearing from yesterday, from very important sources, I don't know.
But yesterday, the IMF chief was asked the same question. And interestingly, she didn't give a timeline. In fact,
that's the whole point.
It was a Ghanaian journalist from Asase who had asked that. She said the whole Ghana, a lot of Ghanaians, 32 million Ghanaians, are looking forward to an IMF deal. When exactly is it coming? And in her response, she didn't give any timeline. She spoke about how she had personally intervened, and at every opportunity she urges Ghana's creditors to assist the country, and they should give, and that they are committed. And once all that process is cleared, the agreement.
Exactly the point. At a point, we even heard Mr. President say categorically that end of March we would have a deal.
Yeah.
Where's the deal?
Yeah. So I mean, clearly the individual who, I mean, is arguably better placed to know when exactly the board approval will come in is being a bit hesitant to give clear timelines and rather wanting to focus on the discussions behind the scenes to get it done. We'll see if we'll be able to meet this deadline this time around, but I don't think we should be bothering too much to be putting out deadlines.
Fishing closed season starts in July. Chiana Paga, home to famous Paga crocodile pond, constituents appeal for roads and a bridge. And that story there on pages 16 and 17 of the Daily Graphic. Colleges of Education teachers excel in licensure exam. That's according to a study. On the international front, Tinubu to be sworn in despite court cases. And it's really interesting now in Nigeria. Nigerian Information Minister Lai Mohammed has said President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu will be sworn in on May 29 despite court cases challenging his victory. Groups dissatisfied by the outcome of the February 25 presidential election are agitating for an interim government as outgoing President Muhammadu Buhari officially leaves office in May. Mr. Mohammed said there was, quote, no basis for the constitution of an interim government. Interesting times in Nigeria, really. IMF yet to agree on date for $3 billion Egypt deal, and the Egypt and the International Monetary Fund have yet to agree on a date for the initial review under a $3 billion financial package signed in December, an IMF official said on Thursday. Now, you get exactly what I mean with Ghana hastening slowly. They had a deal signed in December. The disbursement has still not happened. So the way we are going about this hastily and talking about it and everything, it may take quite a while before even a dollar gets into Ghana's accounts. Look at Egypt. Signed in December. Still, not yet. Because it's one thing crossing the staff level agreement. The other process is restructuring if need be. And the processes that must be triggered before you actually get IMF funding. And the processes are clear, crystal clear.
I mean, you are looking at $3 billion for in the situation of Ghana. I mean, if I'm going to give you a loan of $3 billion, especially someone who clearly, from the data they are providing to me, you are simply telling me that your economy is in tatters. I mean, I have to be very rock sure, because else I'll give you the money, you go and waste it, and you're going to come back again and get my money back. So I need to be very certain that I'm giving you the money and you're going to use it for what we have agreed is the path to ensuring economic stability, so that I can also equally get my money back. This is not a grant we are getting from the IMF. It's a facility they are giving.
I mean, they will not give it to you for 0%. There is a little bit of an interest rate. It's a better deal compared to if you went on the commercial market to actually get
which we can't even go on the market.
Which we can't even do anymore. Charlie, Mozambican authorities seized drugs in Akakpo Didi. Yeah. You know, it reminds me of that Lord Kenya song. Mozambique authorities seized drugs in banana truck. I just wanted to, wrap up on this one. Chiana Paga, home to famous Paga crocodile pond, constitutes appeal for roads and bridge. You know what? I think if we focused as a country, that's why I always say that I think it's haphazard, our leadership. We focus on too many things at a go. If we had a proper plan with the NDPC, look, an entity or a government can come, NPP or NDC, and say, yes, we'll tackle the other things that we must tackle bit by bit, but our focus maybe is going to be education at a certain level. Don't even rush it. Maybe basic level. We'll do X, Y, Z when it comes to F-Cube and all of that. Then roads will ensure that in the next 2 years, for example, our road network from here to there will all be so that those things about dirt roads and all of that, pregnant women not being able to get to the hospital, all of those are dealt with. I feel sometimes we just spread it too thin. You cannot, we can pick and choose as a focus and still do the other things with a bit of, you get it, in there.
A poor man with a lot
Because we are so sparse in our planning, we never get anything done. It's always, yaya kakra, oh, there's a judgment debt here. Oh, this project has been abandoned. And that actually costs more than if we focused and did something.
Yeah, poor man with a lot of problems. You have to construct roads, you have to build schools, you have to pay teachers, you have to do this. So he does a little of this, a little of that, a little of that. And in the end, he doesn't really do better off anything.
In the end, you do nothing.
Exactly.
In the end, you do nothing. And that also reflects in our tourism. Because we have so many of these sites that, look, if we got the right roads, the right connections, the right bridges to some of these places, I'm sure we would, what we are getting out of tourism now. I always say this, there's a place where Nkrumah, during his time, up north, he used to go and relax. Whenever things got really hot in the kitchen, he would go there and relax. It's somewhere, I don't know whether it's the Upper East or the Upper West, one of those places. His car he used, for example, there was this vehicle he used or gifted out. It's become a rust bucket. I mean, these are things that you can put in some museum. Go to the West. They'll quickly do that and commercialize it.
Yeah.
Here we are sitting on it.
In fact, in other jurisdictions, they will make it possible to take a ride in that car. They'll take some good money from you. I mean, we just let it rot. But I mean, here, the good news is that in the last couple of years, 2 years or so, I mean, we've seemed to get some tourism boost of sorts. And so we have a lot of people coming into Ghana. And I think it would be good to take advantage and make some of the key destinations where these individuals tend to visit, give it a facelift and make an attempt to make other areas also look good so that we can also divert it there. So if a place like Paga is also receiving people, just like how, now we know that anyways, when anyone comes, they'll go to Cape Coast Castle. I mean, you know they'll go there anyways. Yeah. If they're going to a place like Paga, you can also know how it will boost the local economy there as well. And so we should also look to doing that as well.
Let's get into some other papers.
Yes, the front page of the Daily Guide now. The Daily Guide has this story about a woman who has killed a rival over a boyfriend.
Hey.
Yes, has a photograph of the two of them. So there's the killed person and there's the suspect, one Mary Akosua Ajiman, and the deceased is Videinin. Mahama runs from do or die comments. It's also on the front page.
He's been explaining recently, talking about it didn't mean butchering and all of that. Why open yourself up to anything?
Come and explain after. 8 MPP boys after Kumewu seat and Ghana IMF bailout approval close. That's according to the IMF boss. That story on page 6 about the boyfriend issue. Very unfortunate development. We are told that a 25-year-old seamstress apprentice, Mary Akosua Ajiman, has been remanded in police custody for allegedly killing a fellow woman in a row over her boyfriend. Videinin, 28, was stabbed in the face, breast, and her palm by her rival at Edwinasi near Kokotro in the Bekwai municipality of the Ashanti region on Sunday evening during a brawl on who is rightfully suited to be the fiancé of the man, an excavator operator. Vida was stabbed numerous times and bled to death in the fight, which was thought to be settled with fists, according to facts made available to the Bekwai Circuit Court. And so the suspects confronted Vida and accused her of spreading rumors about her and the man, which sparked the altercation. In the process, Mary hurried to get a sharp knife and stabbed her adversary. She was later arrested by the Bekwai police together with 2 others. Felicia Sapon, 61, Ernest Atrim, 63, for attempting to hide Mary from arrest. Wow, that's a lot.
That's a lot to digest. Charlie, getting stabbed in the face, your breast, your palm.
Yeah.
But you know, when I hear of people, spewing acid on others or these kinds of gory attacks, it always, people get hurt too. I know there are crimes of passion and all of that, but sometimes I guess some people, I don't know. And this is where anger management is also crucial. I know of 2 people recently in some church where there was a squabble over, guess what? A phone charger. And one was in the scuffle, one was pushed or something of the sort. He died. And now the other person is in custody.
Wow.
Just recently.
Over charger.
Yes.
Goodness.
Workers. So a little misunderstanding. And sometimes, you know what the law says about some crimes where you can do something to someone and within a year and a day, if the person dies, you in Ghana, you will be held culpable.
Yes.
Sometimes people don't know some of these things.
The year and a day rule. So if you slap someone, for instance, you push someone, the person falls down, and the person may be fine now, then 2 or 3 or 6 months or 8 months, 9 months later, the person dies.
And you'll be charged.
Yes, you'll be charged with murder. You don't escape liability once it's within a year and a day.
It is what it is. Well, we've come to the end of our news review. The final newspaper reflecting the same stories we've done. IMF board approval expected in June. Domestic debt exchange program to save Ghana. That is 38 billion Ghana cedis in 2023. IMF, China, World Bank tango over who takes debt restructuring losses. And NPA to regulate bitumen supply chain. Dr. Abdul Hamid says so. Any final words, Joe, before we go?
I think it's been a good and interesting weekend. I hope you enjoy your weekend. Will you be climbing?
I have a packed weekend. And
will you be climbing?
I planned to, but I have this readathon tomorrow that I have to be at and then be at someone's wedding. So it doesn't look like I can do all of that.
I haven't climbed this year, but I'll resume at some point.
Please, let's not reveal our secret. Anyway, Joseph Akakpo joining me for the news review. As we get into sports, where Manchester United scored 2 goals yesterday, courtesy of a certain Sabitzer, and then ceded both goals through own goals. Can you imagine that? To Sevilla. Now, it's a tall task, tall order for us to scale when we go to Spain. But this segment brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. They're offering free prostate screening, free female fertility screening. Locate them in Accra, Spintex, opposite the Shell signboard. Kumasi, Kronoma Boyhia, behind the Angel Educational Complex. Takrade Anaji State Tema Community 22, Techiman Hanswa, and Esiama in Zema. You can reach them on 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. Sports is up next with Muftau Nabila Abdullahi. Do stay. Ghana, for a very good morning to you. Welcome back on the AM show. And you know, when you see me like this with my slides behind me, I'm going to be talking hard about matters crucial to our national life. It's time for my blunt thoughts, which I share with you this morning. And I've titled it, The Country with No Leaders and No Planning. Ghana stripped stark naked. The country with no leaders and no planning. Ghana stripped stark naked. Now, before you contest me, before you question the title to my blunt thoughts, reflect with me on what I'm about to say. I cast my mind back to the 1990s and the demonstrations that took place on the back of some taxes that many of us deemed unbearable. I lived through those times, so I know. And we had the Kumi Preko, Siemi Preko, Viemi Preko demonstrations. Isn't it curious that one of the people who led these demonstrations is now heaping so much suffering, taxes, levies, burdens on the backs of ordinary Ghanaians? Who would have imagined that Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo would lead us into this ditch? Who? Who would have thought of that? Even now, the football investors, as they call themselves, those who like to bet, are going to be taxed about 10% on their winnings. Interesting times indeed. Look, I have my own concerns about these betting entities and all of that. I have my own faith and what my understanding is of that, okay? All that is there. But young people are struggling to keep body and soul together in this country, to keep flesh on bone. And then, if they go and get something little from, some gaming here and there, you want to tax that one too? How wicked can we be? I've just been contemplating this because I see a lot of young people. I was just sharing the other day that I see a lot of young people now walking around mumbling to themselves, saying things that no one understands. They're just talking to themselves. We're leading a lot of young people in this country into early crises, health crises. Especially for us men, the burden is high on us. And for some way, somehow, we must provide. But how do we do that in this economic time? You know what? I have a song for Akufo-Addo this morning. A song dedication. Ube kunya preko nane. Ube sie yen a sie yen preko nane. Ube wie yen preko nane. Those were the titles, the themes of those demonstrations in the 1990s. Kume preko, sie me preko, wie me preko. Yet you're doing that to us today. Look at our economic situation. Look at where we find ourselves. Recently, the Business Insider Africa, quoting from the East African, cited 5 countries that are in the doldrums when it comes to debt in Africa. They cite Egypt, Tunisia, Zambia, Malawi, and guess which country is at the apex of that list? Ghana. Now, we're going to struggle, even if we get that IMF deal, to bring our debt to GDP ratio from the almost 100% it is at to about 55%. That's going to be quite a gargantuan task, a Herculean task. But how did we get here? I'll be going through some of the slides shortly, and you'll see how reckless we've been and how we've ended up here. Again, I want to caution us Ghanaians, as these politicians come to you ahead of 2024, watch them carefully. They'll come and do so many things. They'll come and, cook banku with you, prepare banku, play cards with you, eat kokonte and pepper with you. All be lie. After all lie, be lie. Be so. So watch them, because when they come promising, you must dig further below the surface and find out what really they have on offer. Because like we say, kasa yemframa, talk is mere air. Until you see them deliver. What didn't we see? We'll move from taxation to production. We've moved even deeper, far deeper into taxation. That is where we find ourselves. And it is indeed pathetic as a country. I'll be addressing the West, the likes of America, Germany, the United Kingdom, among others, France and the rest, and part of their hypocrisy shortly. But let me get here. Just take a look at Ghana's $3 billion bailout package from the IMF and what our hopes are. Now, if you look at the steps, the boxes we had to tick. The letter of intent was done. IMF staff assessment was done. You remember they came into the country, Stéphane Roudet. IMF staff report and approval. Domestic debt restructuring, which we had to force down the throats of ordinary Ghanaians to the point where even pensioners had to literally beg to be exempted. But then when it comes to external debt restructuring, that is ongoing, and that is quite a hurdle. And I'll be showing you why exactly, looking at the different sums involved. But what we need now, what has not been approved, what has not seen the light of day, the executive board approval, disbursements, that is the first tranche, and that is crucial, reviews and subsequent disbursements. Now let's go to the second slide. If we go to the next slide, you will see, look at that journey. Imagine Ghana is a car. And look at the loans we've contracted. Now, if you look at China alone, that's what we owe them, 1.7 billion, up to about 1.9 billion, 1.7 billion. The Paris Club, 1.9 billion. Others put together, 3.2 billion. The multilateral loans, we've contracted about 8 billion. And the Eurobond, where we've been shut out of, we can't even go into that market to borrow, 13 billion. And look at what we're looking for. Sum all of these, 13 plus 8, 21 plus 3.2, 24.2 plus... So 25.2, 25.9, 26.1, that will give you 27.1, and this would give you just about 28.45. I just did that very quickly. It wasn't planned. And look at how much we're expecting from the IMF. It's a drop in a bucket. It tells you that while we may use this to stabilize our system briefly, there is much more we should be looking at. If you look at what is in the pool of our external debt, and what we're going to get, and this 3 billion will not even come in like one tranche, bam, they give you 3 billion. That's not how it works. It could come in 500 million tranches. It could come in 1 billion like we've seen in other countries. And so before we get excited, let's think through our real core problems. Next slide. Now, it's also worthy of note, Ghana's project loans from China, because we've been borrowing thinking there's no tomorrow. Tomorrow has caught up with us. The year, if you look at 2019 and 2013, these years, and you look at the amounts we've been contracting. So in 2013, $150 million. oil exports in terms of Integrated National Security Communications Enhancement Network, the Alpha project as it was called. Again, 2013, 850 million oil exports from the Western Corridor. We harness our resources to these loans. Then 2019, 211 million oil exports, Accra Intelligent Traffic Management System and road completion. And again, it's questionable what we use some of these sums of money for. And then 186 million in terms of oil exports. Again, we tie our resources to these loans. And sometimes we have nothing to show for them. Look at some of these projects. Fishing landing sites project. Today, the fishermen are still weeping. Let's go to the next slide. And that is how we've ended up here. But even as we talk about, we'll get this loan, we'll get that loan, I was making the point earlier this morning. Egypt got its agreement in December last year. The release of funds has not even happened yet. You see why we should hasten slowly all this talk about May and all of that? Because we've been setting timelines, giving timelines, and we've failed with each one of them. The IMF has to tick certain boxes. Unless we've ticked them completely, we'll not get even the tranches of money that we are looking for. Now, Zambia will have access to about $188 million. The first tranche out of a total package of $1.3 billion. You see how much they are getting? For starters, in financing, once the review is approved by the IMF management and formally completed by the IMF Executive Board. To remove any hurdles to the timely completion of the review, Zambia needs its official creditors to move forward and reach an agreement on a debt treatment in line with the financing assurances they provided in July 2022. So that's the catch, Ghana, for that last line. The only way forward is to reach an agreement on a debt treatment in line with their own financing assurances that they provided in July 2022 and will be held to the same benchmarks. Let's go to the next slide. Now, when I talk about tying our resources to loans and then not using those loans in a worthy manner that works for generations to come, and how wicked and insensitive our leaders are, this is what I mean. Consider the small country, small in population, Norway. Here's what they're doing. Their population is just 5.4 million, about a sixth of our population. But look at this, look at their GDP. $482.2 billion. That's more than 5-6 times our GDP. Our GDP hovers around 70 billion, right? Look at their GDP. Many, many times more. Ours. And their GDP per capita, $75,000 per capita. Let's go to the next slide. Now, since 1990, they've done something interesting, which I'm proffering to our leaders today. Instead of thinking of the here and now, instead of thinking of self-aggrandizement, instead of thinking of lining their pockets, instead of consuming not just the fruit, but the seeds and the tree as well that produces the fruit. Because that's what our leaders are doing. They consume everything. Look at our gold. It's not going to last forever. But if you look at projections, how much we have left, by 2050 thereabouts, we could be in dire straits. The oil is going to be here for a finite period of time. Now, Norway in 1990 created the Government Pension Fund Global. It was originally the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, and it was to create wealth for, think about it, future generations, not even the current generation, future generations since 1990. Now, the fund rakes in savings from oil revenue, which Norway is also big on. I'm citing this because we too have oil revenue, yet we dig into it and expend it uselessly. From oil revenue, it's among the world's wealthiest funds. And guess what? $1.3 trillion is what we're looking at. $1.3 trillion. Think about it. If we had something like that, we probably wouldn't be going to the IMF. But because we are bereft of thinking, that's why I'm saying that we have no leaders and we have no planning. We don't. If you have proper leadership, will we be where we are? If we planned, would we be where we are? Let's go to the next slide. I also want to talk about the UK red listing Ghanaian health workers. And apparently, you see, here's the good thing about these international outfits. They also monitor the levels when it comes to nurses leaving certain parts of the world. And so the UK has put Ghana's or Ghanaian nurses on ice, the transfer of Ghanaian nurses to the UK on ice. We all know that. Let's go to the next slide for more information. Now, the countries listed have a universal health coverage index that is lower than 50, okay? And once that is noted, it triggers something. So the density of doctors, nurses, and midwives are below the global median of 48.6 per 10,000 population, meaning one health worker in Ghana takes care of about 206 people. And that was part of why this was triggered. Let's go to the next slide. Now, in 2021, the UK took similar action against 46 countries, of which Ghana was included. And what happened? That was what we just made mention of to you. Let's move to the next slide. Just in the first quarter, ignore the bit about, the other bits. In the first quarter alone of 2022, nurses that left Ghana to seek better conditions of service abroad numbered 3,000. 3,000. It has become so dire that now the Director General of the Ghana Health Service has come out to say, you know what? We have to come up with a plan to stem the tide of this, outflow of nurses, else it could impact healthcare delivery. That's how bad it has become. But what have we done? They work brutal hours. We pay them a pittance. Who wouldn't move out? If you don't incentivize it, who would stay? Especially when your inflation and your economy is what it is. Take note of this, the track record, exporting nurses, and we have exported to so many countries. We don't have data on all of them, but the reality is that we have for some countries. In Barbados, we've sent over 400. That was in 2019, if you recall. In Germany, we sent 3,000. In fact, it wasn't an option. They left the country in 2019. Japan, USA, Canada, in fact, Australia as well. We know droves go to those countries as well. We just don't have specific data for them, and that's why we've left the blanks there. But if you look at the thousands that are going out every year, no one will tell you that we have a crisis on our hands. It's not just the vaccines. We have a crisis on our hands. Next slide. And of course, this one, if you think about it deeply, you will realize that we're in a big hole. There are more Ghanaian nurses in the NHS, the National Health Service, in the UK than in Ghana. Think about it. There are more of them outside Ghana than there are in Ghana. The question is why? We all know why. We know why. But we are sitting, waiting for something to happen. And this is where to conclude my thoughts. I also want to call out the hypocrisy of some of these Bretton Woods institutions, the IMF, the World Bank, among others, and some of these countries that will come and wax lyrical and try to be politically correct. The US will come, and Ghana is this. Beacon of democracy, it's more like beacon of democracy, not democracy. What we see here, why did they cite us recently in that report? And Oliver Bakavomo and some of the things we have done here to different people in this country. Why did they cite us? It makes no sense where we are. And it goes back to the point I was making, that if you don't have leaders, then obviously you have misleaders. If you don't have proper planning, then of course you cannot claim to have a plan. That is why I titled my blunt thoughts what I did this morning. So to the West, especially, come off your high horses and be honest with our leaders. Tell them the truth. Stop telling us, and Ghana was doing so well, it's only because of COVID-19 and the Russo-Ukrainian war. We all know better. We read. We know far better than that. Let's be honest. When John Benjamin was in the country, he was saying certain things that the former administration did not like, but a lot of it was true. The V8s and the rest, it was true. Mr. Stricker, the Dutch ambassador, who has now left the country, when he spoke about Ghana, not just beyond aid, but beyond corruption, he was speaking the truth. That is what we need. When recently, the German ambassador, Daniel Krul, spoke about the fact that we have more ministers than his country, yet we're coming to beg from his country, it was the truth. Mr. President went to SONA and castigated diplomats for that, but it was the stark truth. We're stark naked as a country. And you know what happens? We're exposed to the rape, the ravaging of the entirety of the world. And other countries will take advantage of us because we are not clothed with all the resources and everything we have. We have been stripped naked because we don't have leaders and we don't have planning. It is high time, all of us, from the one born today, the one yet unborn, we fight for them and we call for better leadership from our misleaders. They may not like it as I say it, but I'll say it as it is and continue to do so. My name is Benjamin Akakpo. These are my blunt thoughts shared with you, raw, hot, unedited, undiluted. God bless Ghana and make her truly great and strong.
You have a mosquito like 7 signs. The vaccine is not for the mosquito. What causes malaria is the parasite. The parasite is transmitted by the mosquito when it bites any man that has the parasite. So if you are giving a vaccine to the child, what you are doing, one, is to prevent the child from having the malaria or the severe form of the disease. With respect to the mosquito, which is the main vector that transmits the parasite, what we do, one, is prevention. Prevention in the sense that you need to reduce the vectorial capacity. And that can be done if we all ensure that we keep our environment clean. 2, we use the interventions that have been made available to us. If you have the insecticide-treated mosquito nets, you use them. Our parasite prevalence have reduced once again. We are now at 8.6. In 2011, the whole country were around almost 28%. So we have really made progress. But if you have a vector like this, that has the high chance of increasing the mosquito population. What it means is that it has the ability to more or less worsen the malaria situation and retrogress the progress we have made. So indeed, we are cautious of that, and that is why we have all these measures in place, engaging people to understand the need to push towards elimination. And for all of us coming on board, it means that we really have to use the various interventions available and then ensure that we keep our environment clean.
And that is the mosquito you see in your short, Anopheles stephensi, and it's deadlier. It can survive in areas where traditionally the Anopheles would not survive, and we have been exposed. In Tuba and Dansuman areas, there is some conglomeration, if you like, of these mosquitoes. But we have an issue on our hands. It's a health situation, because if they proliferate, you know our health system, we're going to be in a crisis. Well, joining us for a conversation on this all-important matter, we have Florence Kuchi, Director of Public Affairs at the AMA. Madam Kuchi, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, sir.
It's good to have you join the conversation this morning. Now, this is a new invasive species, and we know that traditionally the Anopheles has certain characteristics. This one seems to have broader characteristics. Then again, we know that this Anopheles stephensi and what it does was first detected in Africa, on the continent, in 2019. It is back. What can you tell us about this strain of mosquito and what it means now that it is here with us?
Yes, thank you very much. Let me take this opportunity to say very good morning to your cherished listeners and viewers. We all know that malaria are carriers of mosquitoes are carriers of malaria. They don't, when they bite a person who has the malaria this thing in the person, then
so the parasites.
Mosquito, yes, the mosquito will then take it and then transmit it to another person. And where does these mosquitoes live? Mosquitoes live around our vicinities when we leave our communities dirty, when we leave water in areas that are not supposed to be, when we leave what will I say, use tire, worn-out tires that carry water. That is where these mosquitoes lay their eggs. So it is the duty of everybody within the vicinities, wherever you are, to ensure that you don't live in a bushy community. You make sure that you weed your community, because mosquitoes they give birth in where there are bushes. Also, where there are areas containers that collect water in it, mosquitoes also lay their eggs there and breed in it. So we need to ensure that we clean our communities, we weed our houses. We ensure that we don't leave containers that will collect water that will help in breeding of mosquitoes. Also, we need to put dirty oil in areas that we have gates to do something that water has been collected inside. And when you put the dirty oil in it, due to the how it will cover it, there will not be air for the mosquitoes to live in, so they will definitely die. So when we are able to keep our community clean, we are really doing away with the breeding and then the spread of these mosquitoes. Yes, because for some time now, Ghana is trying as much as possible to be safe from malaria spreading mosquitoes. For instance, the Anopheles mosquitoes. And there has been spraying of larvicides in all the assemblies within the Accra enclave.
Right. So do you feel that with where we are, for example, the Director General of the Ghana Health Service, Dr. Patrick Kumabwaje, makes mention of the fact that to sustain the gains made in the fight against the malaria, a national task force has been set up to advise on strategies of minimizing the impact of this new strain or this new mosquito on the population. Do you feel we're doing enough already? Because there's the malaria control program. But in this instance, with this new development, there's a lot more that we have to be doing, right? What more can we expect from the Public Health Directorate and the AMA?
Malaria control is a holistic effort. It is all-inclusive effort. It is not one entity that is supposed to ensure that we control malaria in the country. It is everybody's business. For instance, as I spoke about the weedy nature of our environment, people live in their houses, they don't see the need to even weed. People live in their houses, they leave containers everywhere. When it rains, they collect water. People live in their houses, they have open spaces that collect water all over. So when we all come together, come on board and ensure that we clean our facilities, we weed our weedy areas, we don't allow water to be collected at areas that are not supposed to be. When you have a container that is there and you think it can collect water, you don't need it. You just separate some holes inside. For instance, our worn-out ties, we leave them, they collect water. You can just separate some holes inside. As we are doing that, we are all coming together. As the medical aspect is taking place, the preventive aspect is also taking place. And then at the end of it all, we all come cumulatively and we all try to do away with the mosquitoes that are going to cause this malaria in us. So in AMA, as you said, the education is still ongoing. We are ensuring that people abide by living in the clean community, because mosquitoes are creatures that like living in dirty areas. If your community is clean, you wouldn't see mosquitoes there. You only see mosquitoes as swampy areas where there are dirty waters and all that. So these are things we all need to come together. It is a collective effort that we need to put together to ensure that we help ourselves.
Now, we do know that malaria kills over 600,000 people, a lot of them children right here in Africa. So it's quite an issue that we have to deal with, looking at the characteristics of this mosquito and the strain of malaria that it actually propagates. But I'd like to find out, I do not know whether you have any details on this. Recently, Ghana became the first country to approve the use of that new malaria vaccine described by scientists as a world changer from Oxford. I do not know whether this came right before this new strain of mosquito and its parasites But it would be interesting to find out whether this vaccine has any impact on the malaria parasites that Anopheles stephensi actually injects or infects a human with. I do not know whether you have any information on that.
Yes, malaria vaccine is a good thing that has come, and Ghana has embraced it. Why? Because children below 5 years are dying a lot through malaria. And when they are vaccinated against the malaria, it means that some antibodies have been introduced into their system. So when the malaria causing mosquito bite, they are able to fight against the parasite that will lead to the causing of the malaria. So Ghana is trying as much as possible to calm down malaria-causing agents. So that is why it has become a very serious issue when these parasites were identified at Cuba and Lansah and its environment. So a lot of effort is being put around that area to ensure that we try with the people living around the area. We all come together collectively, holistically to help as much as possible so that the efforts that have been put in place by the government, ensuring that these malaria vaccines have come in and we have started using it, it does not just become effortless.
We also know that here in Africa, according to statistics generated by the World Health Organization, this could put as many as 126 million more Africans at risk of getting malaria because of how this new vector proliferates and all of that. But I'd like to find out, to conclude the conversation, the Director General of the Ghana Health Service has charged regional and district health directors to implement a number of measures, including the removal of water collection points in and around homes and communities to minimize breeding sites, among others. What would be your charge to individuals, ordinary Ghanaians? What should we be doing in our communities? What are some of the steps we should follow to prevent attracting these dangerous mosquitoes?
Yes, so as ordinary Ghanaians, we still go back to the same thing. We ensure that wherever we live, we should not leave our environment to be so swampy, to be so weedy. We shouldn't leave our areas that there are open trenches that will collect water. So when you have a place that you've seen that there is an area that it has rained, water has collected, and then you feel it can lead to breeding of mosquitoes, you just try and get some dirty oil and pour it on top of kerosene. When you pour it on top of the water, it will cover the top, so there will not be any oxygen beneath it. So if there are other mosquito larvae inside, they are all going to die. We should also ensure that we don't leave containers that will also collect water when it rains. We should try to empty every water that has been collected during rain. Our worn out tires, we should try to put some preparation on them so that they don't collect water. When we are able to do all these things, we ensure that we don't throw our rubbish indiscriminately. Everybody to ensure that you manage your vicinity very neat to ensure that there wouldn't be a place serving as a suitable environment for these mosquitoes that to have the chance to breathe in. So I think if we all do these things together, including the education that the public health officers are giving out there, we are going to try and help to fight this as a country.
And we also know, just to cap off the conversation, that it can breed even in extremely high temperatures, which you wouldn't usually expect of the mosquitoes. So during the rainy season, they are pretty active. But this, strain of mosquito can breed even in, survive and breed in extremely high temperatures during the dry season as well. So it's not just about the rainy season and what will happen. The dry season as well. We must keep all of these in mind in the course of the period. Florence, we're grateful for your time this morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
And Florence Kuchi is a Director of Public Health with the AMA. She joined us for that conversation. We know what to do. Let's apply it and stay safe. Look at the casualty rate across the world, 600,000 every year, a lot of them children in Africa. And according to the World Health Organization, about 126 million Africans are going to be exposed on the back of this new mosquito breed. Not new technically, but its return to Africa, Anopheles stephensi. Well, that's how we cap off the conversation. But up next, we have more for you on the AM show. Bernice Lansah will be taking over from here.
A very good morning to you. Trust you're doing well. This is still the AM show. I'm Bernice Lansah. And earlier you heard Benjamin Akakpo having a conversation on that new breed of mosquito that has been found to be in the country. And so you must just be cautious and take the necessary precautions to prevent yourself from getting infected with malaria. Let's now move to the second leg of our big stories, and we are focusing on the latest poll by Global Info Analytics, and it has to do with the president's approval ratings. And thankfully I've got the man responsible to share with us exactly what they found out, and he's in the person of Musa Dankwa. He's Executive Director of Global Analytics. I've also got political marketing consultant at the University of Education, Winneba, Mr. Dr. Tutu Boahin. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining the program. So let's set the tone for the conversation, Mr. Dankwa. What exactly did you find out as the cause for the dip in the president's approval ratings?
I think one could attribute that to maybe the tightening of economic situation. We saw in January a slight improvement in his approval rating. And I think between that period and now, people feel that things have kind of reversed a bit, but not to the level that we saw in October. So you can see that it's a slight dip in his approval rating from, I think, 59 to 65% disapproval.
But interestingly, a majority of people who associate themselves with the party approved his performance.
Yes, about 58%. But beside the MPP affiliates, every other voting bloc disapproved his performance.
Let me come to you, Dr. Tutu Boahin. What does this mean for you? Is this just a mere, like we say in this country, support somebody just because you identify with them, or you see that this is a true sense of people who are being critical of issues and giving their opinions about it? Kindly unmute for me, please.
Bernice, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning to my good friend, Musa Dankwa, and good morning to viewers too. I think from a start, I would say I'll give thumbs up to Musa for the thorough work that he has done. Obviously, I've gone through what he has done, and from methodology to the analysis, I think he deserves thumbs up. With regards to the question, in terms of the approvals, if we should, take the partisan issues out for now, one thing that gives me some kind of scare with regards to the president's approval rate is the fact that, a bit of, or a large majority of floating voters, those who swing between partisan, voting, disapprove the president's performance rating. And I think that would be a major scare, to the MPP's campaign going forward. And again, when you put all voter cohorts together, and you still see a drop, in the president's approval rating, then it means that directly or indirectly, it is a loss of confidence in the current administration's performance, and that I think that going forward, it is even more than mere rhetorics, and it is not the issue that anybody within the MPP can take it for granted. And I think that when your performance, is given a low rating or a reduced rating, then obviously it shows that there's so much to be done. I want to believe that if it is someone's or a private business that let's say the president has been appointed as the CEO, and workers, customers are, giving that low rating. Obviously, what it means is that management or the board will take a second look at it and probably advise or, as it were, get a replacement.
Right.
And that is where, from a political marketing angle, I believe that the MPP as a party, regardless of who is in charge, should be able to put their heads together and, probably advise the president appropriately, restructure the party strategies going into 2024, and probably, come up with pragmatic policies between now and December 2024, or whenever the election will be conducted in 2024.
Right. So, and so if I get you clearly, for you, the question about those affiliated to the NDC or NPP seemingly just given a thumbs up or not because of who they identify with is neither here nor there, because the floating voters indicate what the general populace may be feeling, right?
Yeah, so my point is that if MPP supporters will give a high approval rate to the president, that is not, a surprise. It rather becomes a misnomer when they give a low rating.
But doesn't that then prove that people are just voting a yes or no because they like the person and not necessarily taking into focus the issues at stake? Doesn't that worry you at this stage in our democracy and development?
So party supporters will always do that. And for me, that is not really a surprise within our context.
I'll ask you to hold on for a minute because I need to clarify something here. I remember the last time we spoke, these are not people you go to verify as card-bearing members, right?
No.
They're people who identify or sympathize with the party. We just needed to set that straight. But it's interesting you speak about the impact on this on the next elections, possibly, because that's where I was going to. And the interesting thing is that in that survey also, there was a question asked about who voters trust to better manage the economic crisis, okay? And in there, even though John Dramani Mahama has a higher percentage, it is a dip of what was recorded in January.
That's correct.
Right? And Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, who is also 2 points behind John Dramani Mahama, rather had an increase. So I'm looking at the chart here, and it's interesting for me. I just wanted to break it down a bit to us. So Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia in January scored 15% trust to manage the crisis, and in April he had 17%. John Dramani Mahama in January had 46%, and in April has 43%. What is accounting for the dynamics?
I think it's a lot of factors that are accounting for these dynamics. In particular, the feeling that things are beginning to stabilize with regards to the economy. And we've always said that if the economy is the key battle issue, then the success or failure of the government would depend on how people perceive the economy. And I think people will bear witness that between October to December, a little part of January, February, there was a bit of, easing of cost rises, petrol prices were stabilizing, and that Bahama tend to benefit from that kind of economic environment. Now, if that gets worse, you also pay the price for it. So we can see the feeding into the polling numbers, the way people are feeling on the ground.
It's very interesting, the play here. For you, Dr. Boahing, so would you necessarily then say that there is a direct correlation, and depending on what the economy looks like, we cannot be too sure who is likely to win the 2024 elections? As he said, if it stays as it is, then the figures we are seeing may persist. But if there's a swift turnaround, then we are likely going to see a much more stiffer competition.
Precisely, because the expectation of people, that is Ghanaians, is that they would need a leader who is in the capacity of managing our economy, to improve our standards of living. And so it has to do with confidence. It has to do with who gives a better output. So if you look at the drop in JDM's confidence, probably the voter is comparing his past, experience as to regards to what has been achieved within this short period. That is from January to this time. And remember that initially, what has actually promoted the MPP has been, the confidence that the Ghanaian voter had in Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia as one of the best managers of our economy. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see that 2% increase, as Musa had said, that because of some level of price reductions on the market with regards to fuel prices, with regards to foodstuffs and some improvements in the living standards of people. So that probably is bringing the confidence that people have in him back. But we can also not discount, because if you see the appreciation of Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, you will see that Kennedy or Ohene Japan recorded a 4% increase from 8 to 12, and that is also significant. So the question is, why was he able to achieve that 4%, rating? And obviously, probably because people believe in him, people are looking at his business acumen and the fact that he has been able to manage a lot of businesses, and that people believe that when given the opportunity, he can equally do well. So it's a matter of time. A lot of things can change people's minds, that is voting decisions, voting intentions. And so we're looking forward to an exciting kind of elections in 2024.
It's interesting you've introduced Kennedy Ohene Ejiapong. So let me just move. I wanted to save this for later, but once you've brought him in, let me just deal with this and shelve it. If you just joined us, we are discussing the latest report by Global Info Analytics, and we've touched on the approval ratings of President Akufo-Addo. We've spoken about what the survey found out to be who people trust to manage the economic crisis. Now let's move to who to lead the NPP. And in there as well, January 2023, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia had 32%, Alan Kojo Tremartin had 41%, and Kennedy Ejiapong had 14%. Now fast forward to April, and Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia drops to 29%, Alan Tremartin drops to 30%, but Kennedy Ejiapong is such a sharp rise from 14% to 23%. There again, you would want to wonder what exactly on that score is accounted for this. Let me come to you first, Mr. Dankwa.
I think people are beginning to see him as an option within the MPP, and even indeed across the country as well. He's been saying a lot of stuff to people that he meets, and from our officers in the field, he's been really going to the ground and he's talking a lot. What we've also noticed is that his support is not coming from people who have poor education. He has about 22% of his supporters having the first degree. So it's not a riffraff that are supporting Kennedy Ejiapong. So it's a broad-based coalition he's putting together. And he's kind of eating into Bawumia and Alan bases. Last I think July, he started with Bawumia. He cut his lead up to a point. I think he's done with Bawumia. He's now going into Alan. They must figure out how to respond. Otherwise, he'll keep rising in the poll.
Reminds me of what we saw with the Nigerian elections. Peter Obi coming from nowhere and challenging the status quo so strongly, making such a phenomenal mark. Are you seeing Kennedy Ejiapong doing same, Dr. Boahen?
Yes, it's unfortunate the media is not giving Kennedy or Ejiapong that needed attention or media coverage. And I think that if the media should follow him, throughout his campaign, as Musa has indicated, you will see. And you see, Musa made an interesting stuff here, indicating that majority of the cohort following him are people with first degree and above, indicating that these are rational voters who have the capacity to even influence, undecided voters. And that makes his campaign very interesting. I mean, I think that he's segmenting right from a political marketing perspective. He's segmenting right. I think that if you have such cohorts behind you, first degree, PhD, and up, you will see that these are people who are influencers, and in marketing perspective, that strategy is a kind of buzz marketing, right? Buzz marketing means you are segmenting opinion leaders who can influence your campaign, and once you succeed in doing that, anything that they put up, any story that they put up, any message that they give to their subordinates and people, within their networks would work for you, all right? And so I am tempted to believe that, like Peter Obi, by 2024, Kennedy Ohene Japan could cause a surprise in the Ghanaian politics. And if it is anything to think about, then probably I think that both Dr. Bawumia and Alan Kwadwo Martin should be thinking of who to choose in terms of their vice presidential candidates.
Interesting. So we just shared some statistics, and then we said that was related to all voters. But even when you come to NPP-affiliated voters, it doesn't change much. He still has an increase from the compared to the January 2023 statistics. But let's come to the point of education, because you two referred to that. And I'd like to say it's important that we say that also, so you understand that he doesn't just appeal to educated persons. When it comes to him, people who do not have an educational background, he has his highest support from that group of people who are at about 26%. Now, on who to lead the NPP and what is likely to do to the party, because quite recently we've heard from some persons considered as leaders in the party, some suggesting that it is time for Alan Kwadwo Kyerematen, and some saying that, well, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia may have proven through hard work that he deserves it instead. Now we see Kennedy Japan coming in strongly, inching closer and closer. Let's look at the dynamics for this, for the NPP as a party, and what it's likely to do to the party, comparing it to what we see on the other side, which is the NDC. It's quite clear that majority of the support is going towards John Dramani Mahama. What could the seeming cracks, how will it impact the campaign of the NPP going into the 2024 elections, Dr. Boahen?
Yeah, so we've realized from research that over the years, demographics, play a major role when it comes to determination of election results. All right, and more particularly when it has to do with age and it has to do with education. And these are two important determinants, of voting outcomes. And so if you see, or probably if you analyze, the data in front of us, obviously you are seeing a dominance in terms of the low, educated as compared to the highest, in education. And so when you look at the junior high school as compared to those without education, you probably will see that Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia has 30% each, all right? Alan Kwadwo Kyerematen has 32 and 23. Put together, that gives you about 55% as compared to 60% from Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. And a jump, by Kennedy Ohene Japan, to about, 50%. And that is significant. So you see between 60 and 50%, cross differences between the three of them. And to me, it wouldn't take much of a time, to bridge the gap for Kennedy Ohene Japan. That is if his campaign goes very well, with his targets. And so I am tempted to believe that there's that, as I've indicated, there is that correlation between, education and voter outcome. So if any of them is able to make inroads with regards to some of these things, I think that it will be good. But you see that most of Ghanaian voters are the people with low educational background or no educational background. They dominate, our voter segments, and it makes it quite interesting that whoever is able to win majority of that group is likely to make an important determination of the election. And secondly, you will see that majority of kingmakers, that is the swing, as it were. We are having a constant increase in swing voter populations in Ghana. And most of these people are people who would, in any other day, are able to determine, who becomes the president of this country. So you will see them within the highest levels of education, the rational voters. So, all in all, no one can play with these different cohorts in education, right? So, I think that whoever is managing the campaign of these three potential candidates of the MPP has a difficult task, and they should rather be working hard from a political marketing angle, to be able to win not just the swing voter, but also the uneducated and the least educated, in society.
Interesting. What about you, Musa Dankwa? What do you make of these dynamics, and whether or not they're likely to affect the NPP based on the seeming cracks we're seeing compared to the NDC, which appears to be, throwing most of its weight behind John Dramani Mahama?
Okay, if you look at the data at the moment, in the race between Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia and John Dramani Mahama, you can see about 13% of MPP voters opting to vote for Dr. John Dramani Mahama. Now, that cracks haven't manifested yet. So if after the campaign, they're unable to bring the party together, that number will go up. And we're going to see this in the Akan areas and also in the northern part of the country. If Alan is the candidate, we expect the Akan areas to be galvanized. And we can see that in Alan numbers against Mahama, that he's racking up to 79% or so in Ashanti region and elsewhere. And then his numbers kind of dropped in the northern regions against Mahama. So we have the north and south divide. Regardless of who is MPP's candidate, this crack will show. And that crack, as to whether the overall impact of the crack will depend on the volume of votes coming from each area.
Right. So for you, it is not what happens before the flag bearer is selected, but after. After,
yes. After. That's very crucial.
That's an interesting point.
That could help them to kind of galvanize their base and rally them around a candidate, or they will just scatter, and that will be a disaster for them.
But don't you believe that there is an impact of how the primaries will be conducted on their ability to come together after? And we're beginning to see people get a bit personal. People begin to go into some kind of politics that we will term as unhealthy. So what for you will be that good way of doing the primaries now, so that once they exit that stage, it will be easier to pull the support base together?
The best way to do it is to avoid arm twisting. If it is open and fair field, people lost fairly, I think it will be much easier for them to come together. But if people are seen to have been kind of arm twisted and then pushed against the wall, I think that unity will be difficult.
Yesterday, Mr. Ikeotu was on Upfront, and he made a statement to suggest that it was time for Alan Tremantin. We've heard this before, where people say that Alan Tremantin, retreated so that Nana Akufo-Addo could become the party's flag bearer. So it would be unfair to him to put up Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia to come and compete so fiercely against him. But there are those who also believe that this is healthy competition and everybody must prove their worth, convince the delegates on why they should be voted for. But over time, we're beginning to see the MPP noted for something. Remember the last elections, what happened in Fomena, which affected them greatly, eventually when that independent candidate had to now cede his allegiance back to the party, and then he was made a deputy speaker. We are beginning to see that again. We're hearing from the camp of the NPP that they have told delegates where they have MPs that the MPs preferably should go unopposed. And so when you see, that came to mind when you used the term arm twisting.
Yes.
And we're seeing all these things play up again. Even on that scale, how do you see it playing up on the bigger platform, and whether or not you think it's even possible?
Look, I have a very strong opinion about that. There are some MPs that are not performing, that it will be in the party's interest to let them fall on their swords. If they propel them and then arm twist and protect them, the election 2024 will be disaster for their parliamentary seats. Because when you present a fresh candidate, they have a fresh opportunity to go back to the voters and say, look, I'm different, I'm new, I won't be what this guy was, so give me the chance. Then you put the voter in a very unique situation that, oh, should I give him a chance? But if you impose people on them, the ramification will be quite disaster.
What are your thoughts, Dr. Bahim, on this issue?
Putting up candidates, I think the last time I visited the studio, I mentioned it, right? And I said that you don't just pick a candidate. And another point that I'll still hold on to is the fact that the delegates, need to make informed decisions for Ghana, not for themselves, not to enrich themselves. All right. Now, so when you check even the regionals, statistics that Mr. has brought, you will see that Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia is leading about 8 regions. That is among all voters, right? And Kennedy Ohene Japan is leading 2. And
Alan
Tremantin is leading about 6. All right, he has about 6. So it tells you who is even popular among voters in Ghanaian regions. All right. Now, so if this data is anything to go by, then obviously the first pick of the national voter is Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. All right. Now, you will see that when you look at certain performances and you compare this to other, statistics that Mr. brought, you will see that, for example, the age stuff, you will see that it is a close fight between Alan and Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. And we also see that Kennedy Japan is making important inroads. Now, so as the question is, you see, you cannot discount the support base of each of them. And that depending on the unity in the party, if the unity is mild and the MPP management is not able to, control the campaign messages, the insults, the fights, and more importantly, as Mr. put it, arm twisting, someone favoring a candidate and supporting a candidate, as against the other, especially if the party leadership are in the position of doing that, then of course it will be a negative, against who the other candidates, and that is one place that the MPP needs to be careful. And for me, I have followed the campaign of all of them, And as at now, I've not seen any insult coming from any of them. I think that they are all campaigning based on their strengths. They are campaigning and delivering messages based on their vision. And they are also campaigning and giving reasons why, the delegates should vote for them. And I think that it is good for the MPP if they are able to manage this process, because we've seen it in 2008, where insults against one another affected the candidature of President Nana Akufo-Addo. Certain descriptions were put in there, which the opposition actually used against Nana Akufo-Addo in 2008. And I think that should not be a repeat. Political parties should be learning to improve, their campaign going forward at any day, any time. So at this point, unity is important, very, very important, and they need to cement that from the word go. And if they are able to do that and build on that unity, I think that it will be a very interesting contest in 2024. I've always said that political parties don't lose elections, but they prepare and hand over to an opposition party. So if it is not deliberate that MPP would want to work its way out to opposition, then of course they need to maintain a very strong unity within their campaign so that they can give the MDC a good fight. Else, breaking the eight may remain a doubt.
Who to vote for? A major concern for many voters here in this part of the world is whether or not it will be a free and fair process, whether or not my vote will count, whether or not I would have the opportunity to exercise my right. And I think it's important that you brought the issue of the new constitutional instrument into this particular survey, because here again, you see what a cross-section of Ghanaians want. So support for the new CI for election 2024. And 37% said yes. 50% said no. And 13% had no opinion. Let's start off on the point of those who had no opinion. Why exactly was it that they were apolitical, they were not interested in the politics, or they just couldn't understand the issues to form an opinion?
No, we explained the issue in the questionnaire.
Okay.
We said that EC wants to use the national ID card as the sole document you require to register to vote, and that they are going to remove the
other
option which enables somebody to vouch for you, for you to vote without the national ID card. Do you support removal of the guarantor system and use the national ID as the only document required? It was very clear. There's no ambiguity with that.
Right.
And I think those who are don't have opinion, they do have opinion, but it's not very strong.
Okay.
Remember, there are those who get the EC card previously just as an identity card.
You're right.
Not because they want to vote.
You're right.
Now, NIA card is the sole card for national ID. So, voting card is no longer important for them. And indeed, there are certain religious groups that will not even go for EC card any longer because they don't vote.
Right.
So those are the people that no opinion.
Yeah. So almost like they're apolitical. But the larger percentage of the people you spoke to said they didn't want this.
No,
they didn't want this. And I just hope that the people who represent them in Parliament know that this is what the people want. Absolutely. Because in any case, it is what the people want that should be given priority.
And we asked a further question, whether if EC succeeds in that CI, will they take the extra journey to go and get the card just to come and register and vote?
Yes.
Split in the middle. 35 said no, they won't. And that's a large number of voters. And we are looking about maybe 1.9 or 2 million first-time voters. And if you take that percentage from that's a huge number.
And so does this feed into the argument of the main opposition that you're likely going to disenfranchise many people?
And that data shows, it's proven in the report. Yes.
Interesting. Dr. Tutu Boahing, so we're seeing here the statistics showing, would you travel a good distance to obtain the NIA card in order to register to vote? All voters, 42% said no, and unregistered voters, 35% said no. That's almost, like he said, split in there because 35% said yes. Do you agree that this will necessarily translate into disenfranchising people during elections?
I think that to me, the decision of the voter is more important. And if for a particular reason, as Musa was trying to articulate, that people will obtain certain ID cards for various reasons, right? So the value of the ID cards become more important to the person. So somebody believes that if I have the Ghana card, it is not just for the purposes of voting alone, but for other reasons. The person will see the need to probably travel to get the card. It suggests that the person may own a card, but will not also engage in voting. All right. Some others who believe that it is purposely for voting, and the other additional value, is not that important to me. Then that person will put in more effort to go get the card. And so the decisions are there. But for me, my points with regards to obtaining the national ID card is not so much related to disenfranchising people. But I believe that, you see, Ghanaians need to take decisions for Ghana. And so if it is a fight between the Ghana card and any other identities, with even including our passports, we need to ensure that the legislative instrument is not really biased, the CI is not really biased, all right? But the point still remains that if we are going to be fair and to ensure that we put in appropriate strategies and measures in place, not to get foreigners, to decide for Ghana, that is the most important thing. Because, you see, we have also seen that we have a lot more Nigerians in Ghana and other nationals in Ghana who have access to the Ghana card. So just as some other nationals have access to Ghanaian passports and the voter ID cards, as we are saying, then of course we have traded unnecessarily, our Ghanaian identity for foreign interest, and that will not be good for our electoral process. In other jurisdictions, you cannot go as a foreigner to decide, for those countries in terms of elections. All right, and so I think that it is not the debate about which of them to use, but it is about putting in measures to ensure that these identities documents do not fall into unnecessary hands, where those people can use it to make a determination for Ghanaians. To me, that is where the missing link is, and that is where we need to address the issue. All right, it is not just about voting, and it is not just about owning a card. The debate goes beyond these things. And so I think that our lawmakers in Parliament, and together with the EC and its management, its board, should consider this issue thoroughly and not just push it along partisan lines, to the detriment of the Ghanaian interest. I think that proper narrations, proper debates go into this thing, so that at the end of the day, it will be a blessing for Ghana so that our national anthem, God Bless Our Homeland Ghana, will be a reality.
Shouldn't we then have sought the opinion of Ghanaians before making this move in the CI?
I think that's a lesson for any public institutions. If you're bringing in a major policy, what I know from where I grew up is that you test that policy in the public opinion. There are some CSOs that will help you shape the debate and understand the issues before we begin to put them in a policy. In Ghana here, we never do that. And I think we should take the lesson from this and try and test some of this in opinion poll before we begin to craft legislation to address them.
So we're wrapping up the conversation in about a minute or two. My last question to you, Mr. Musa Dankwa, has to do with the question, can the NPP break the 8? And over 50% say no, both in January and in April 2023. What cues should the NPP and the major opposition, that's the NDC, be picking from these opinions that have been shared?
I think breaking the 8, one thing that they've done well in this round of poll in NPP is that now most of their voters believe they can break the 8. As to what made them feel like that, I don't have the reasons. But the NDC floating voters and the rest of the voting bloc don't believe they will break the 8. So they must convince the other voting blocs to share in the same belief. Otherwise, they will be on their own.
And how does it play out for the main opposition?
I think for them, they have to capitalize on that, what they have as an advantage, keep the ship steady. That's what they have to do, because the numbers are quite favoring them. Now, what we found very strangely this time around is that, in fact, not this time around, it's been consistent for the past 6 months, that the John Mahama is performing far better in the swing regions than the national average, which is highly unusual.
Right.
Usually the races in the swing regions are much tighter than the national average. But in this case, he's performing far better in the swing regions, which is in the central region, in the western region, in the northeast region, and Greater Accra. And in Greater Accra, the numbers are quite bad for the MPP candidates.
Interesting. You have the last word, Dr. Tutubuahin, breaking the 8, the pros and cons, based on the statistic we have now. Over 50% of the people who share the opinion believe that the NPP can't break the 8. What is in there for the NPP and the NDC to learn?
I think that it is, as Musa has explained, people who believe that the MPP cannot break the 8 are saying that for reasons and for experiences that they are going through. Secondly, it is a tradition, with regards to the 2 terms in office for the 2 major political parties. And again, I also believe that breaking the 8 is strongly dependent on swing voter intentions and decisions. And so if John Dramani Mahama is actually, doing well in swing regions, then of course it is a threat to breaking the 8. Obviously, when you check the statistics in 2016, the parliamentary and the presidential elections, John Dramani Mahama didn't do well in all swing regions. That is the NDC and John Dramani Mahama didn't do well in all swing regions. And that is just a consideration to, signal the MPP that if you are not doing well in swing regions, then that is dangerous. If they don't take pragmatic measures, to forestall some of these cracks, what it means is that you will see another huge gap between the party that will win and the party that will lose.
Thanks for your time this morning. Dr. Tutubuahin is a political marketing consultant at the University of Education, Winneba, and Musa Dankwa is Executive Director of Global Info Analytics. And we've been discussing Global Info Analytics' latest national poll, which saw the president's approval ratings drop, plus all the other things that we've been discussing. If people want to get the full document, how do they access it?
It's on their website.
Okay, globalinfoanalytics.com.
.com.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning here on the AM show. Well, when we return, we will be talking about the World Book Capital, because Ghana, or the city of Accra, has been selected as the 2023 World Book Capital. I'll be back to tell you more about that. Please stay.
Welcome back. And we talk about one great boon. In the midst of everything happening, there are still a few things we have to celebrate. And Ghana has been selected as the world capital, the world book capital, if you like, 2023 by UNESCO. But what exactly does that mean? And what do we stand to gain from all of this? In fact, what are we going to be doing in the course of this year? Because it's a year-long activity, a year-long achievement. Well, joining us this morning, we have Aaron Chum Akakpo. I nearly said Akakpo. He is Director, Strategy and Innovation at the Ministry of Education. He joins us for a conversation. Mr. Akakpo, a very good morning to you.
Very good morning to you.
This morning, my oral faculties are trying to get around the Kwa. I don't know why this morning, because it's a name that I am pretty familiar with, but Akakpo.
Yes, please.
It's good to have you. I believe this is the very first time we're interacting on the air.
First time to be on JoyNews. Thank you all for having us.
Great. How did we attain this feat? I know your team, together with others, put together a whole lot. You actually had to put in a bid, right?
Most definitely. And so several countries or cities bid, obviously. And what we did is we have an interministerial and agency committee led by the Ghana Book Development Council, put together just a fantastic dossier to pretty much win over UNESCO and the committee so that Accra could be chosen as the World Book Capital. And I wanted us to think about it as the World Cup for reading. That's how big of a deal this is.
The World Cup for reading.
Yeah, you got to think about it that way.
Wow.
And this is the 22nd year that has happened. The inaugural city was Madrid in 2001. And so we're one of 4 countries in Africa to receive the World Book Capital, and actually the only 3rd city in sub-Saharan Africa, joining Guinea and Nigeria as representatives from sub-Saharan Africa, and Egypt being the other African nation. So we received this honor even before the United States, before Germany, before Russia, before China. So this is a very, very big deal as far as representing our culture and our education system in Ghana through literacy and through reading.
All right. Now tell us, you've told us that it's like it's the World Cup of reading
yes,
or books.
Yes.
But what does it mean in real terms? Because someone would say, yeah, well, so we're going to be this for a year, but what does it come with? What does it mean for Ghana?
So I really want to talk about like our thematic areas. First, let's start with our theme and what it represents, our thematic areas, and how we're going to actually see some levels of benefit from this process, right? So our theme is reading to connect minds for social transformation. This actually should be social economic transformation. So again, we're going to read to connect minds for social transformation. Now, one thing that you obviously understand as a journalist is the absolute need for the ability to read well, write well, and communicate well. So first of all, we're going to transform minds and promote lifelong learning through a series of reading promotion activities throughout the country. So there's going to be like a bombardment of activities happening where communities are going to see more reading, see more literacy, and have opportunities to engage with reading at a level that we haven't done before. Secondly, we're going to be providing schools and communities with books and reading infrastructure. One of the biggest things that I've heard since I moved back to Ghana about 1.5 years ago was, we can do all these things, but we don't have the infrastructure at this point in time. So this is being a situation we're going to be able to provide several communities, especially throughout Greater Accra, because Accra is the book capital. So with these books, with the infrastructure, and we're going to construct a facility in Accra for reading and creative writing. So it's great that you read, but you may be reading someone else's ideas and thoughts. So we actually need to do more of our own writing as a country and more of our creative writing. We need to express creatively who we are as Ghanaians. Next, we're going to really focus in on the publication and use of Ghanaian language to revamp the Ghanaian book industry. We are doing something in our book industry that needs to be reversed. We are bringing in things from outside so much. I realize that even though Ghana is a British writing country, I've seen that we're slowly starting to do things where we write like the Americans do because our books are coming from there. Because even our computers are programmed with that
so
language.
The spellings are also changing.
The spellings
color,
are changing.
Color with a U, without a U.
I thought coming from the U.S. to Ghana, I would have to change, but I didn't have to. And that's not how it should be, right? And also Ghanaian language is being lost in the creative sense of it all. Like I haven't heard or seen too many books in Cree, in Dagomba, in Krobo, in the languages that we all came from, right? And we call it mother languages. So we came from these languages, but we're not doing as much as we should. So World Book Capital is going to focus on that. And in addition to that, we're going to promote creative skills to address rising unemployment and substance abuse and truancy in schools. The idle mind is a devil's workshop.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it again. The idle mind is a devil's workshop. Is the child is too busy at the community center reading, they can't do those vices.
They can't engage in those vices.
Exactly. If the child is too busy learning how to program a robot, they will not be doing those other vices. So that's what World Book Capital is really going to focus in on.
I see. So it's interesting. You've brought up these thematic areas. We'll be looking at a few other things. So the theme is reading to connect minds for social transformation, the Accra World Book Capital 2023. And then you go on to talk about the 6 broad thematic areas.
I didn't get to the last.
Yeah, you not got to the last one, but go ahead if you.
So also it's about promoting fundamental human rights. So, for example, in our committee meeting yesterday, someone said, His Excellency, the President, is also the President of the Calle. He's also the President of the Street Children. So we have to understand that we have street children, we have individuals who cannot read and don't have literacy. They lack power and freedom. And they lack the ability even to protect themselves. When you can read, when you can access material, everything needs an application. Yeah. So if you can't read it, then you can't apply, therefore you can't be a part of. We don't want anyone to miss out in this process. And then lastly, it's about Ghanaian arts and culture. I remember being a young man living in the United States and watching tapes of Asofo, watching tapes of Obra and those type of things.
How do you find those?
Oh, it's funny because it's interesting. I was able to get everything Ghanaian in the States. In my own household, to make extra money, we would make kenke and chito, you see, in California. But you come to Ghana and we're eating fried rice. We're losing our culture. It's not to say that we cannot have those other things coming from other parts of the world, but we're putting those things above us. And that's what this was going to do. World Book Capital is going to hopefully re-spark that feeling of, let's write our own plays. Let's write our own movies. Let's connect and make culture academic.
So you feel this is going to impact creativity in Ghana, both from the Anglo point of view and from the traditional language point of view. And how are you going to manage that?
Oh, fantastic. So we are actually supporting publishers to publish in Ghanaian language, as we discussed, right? Okay. We're also bringing everyone in the publishing community in Ghana on board to the committee. Every single major publishing committee, union, whatever you want to call themselves, are in our committee. I'm sitting there with Ghana Book Development. I'm sitting there with Ghana Library Association. I'm sitting there with the private publishers and having these conversations. The people who approve our textbook, NACA, is on the committee. So we are actually saying, and we're using expert knowledge from the business industry side and from academia. Listen, I'm academic. I'm a history teacher by trade, master's in curriculum and instruction, but we're not the end all and be all. We need the practitioners there also to talk to us. And so that's why I think it will happen and it will kind of fruition.
Now, coming from where you sit, you would look at the contribution of our government. And of course, without government support, the support of the ministry, we'll go nowhere with this. And I'm sure some of those were taken into consideration before even considering giving us this title of being the World Book Capital for 2023.
Go ahead.
What then has support from governments and been like, and what in the course of this year are we hoping the support will be like in rolling out, in achieving these thematic areas that you have mentioned? It will take a lot of work and a lot of capital as well to bankroll this.
Okay.
What role will our government play? What role will UNESCO play in all of this, in aiding us get to? I mean, it reminds me of when that ship that goes round the world with books, you know, it docks here every few years, comes to Ghana. So now, let's say it is going to dock here for a full year. How do we make the most of it? What is government doing? What is UNESCO going to do?
Okay, so first of all, I do want to talk about government. I also want to start with, and that's actually going to support talking about our inaugural event. So our inaugural event is April 24th, 2023, so in about
That's just about 10 days away.
10 days away from now. And the keynote speaker is His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo.
Right.
And so the president is highly engaged and involved in this process. And he is the education president. Like, he just is. Like, and so with that being said, like you also mentioned, there's no way that UNESCO and the committee would have given us the ability to be the World Book Capital if we did not show capital. So we've already proven to them that there's going to be huge levels of investment. And so like we talked about, the infrastructural pieces in Greater Accra and throughout the country, the support that we're going to be providing teachers in training and things of that nature, the resource building and gathering. And also what UNESCO really does, they do a fantastic job of supporting us, especially Ministry of Education and Ministry of Culture, with technical advice. And with technical advice coming from Ghanaians. So when we hear UNESCO, we think of an international body that is coming in with all these other individuals, but the bulk of UNESCO Ghana is Ghanaian. And so we have high-level academic people, high-level practitioners who are going to be providing technical advice. So I'm not going to get into the weeds of exactly what government is doing. I'm not a government official. I am here to represent the committee, but I will say this, that there is a deep and high-level commitment. There's no way for us to get the sign-off to be the World Book Capital without that level of commitment from government. And also UNESCO is there to support us with technical support and advice. And with all of the positives and challenges that the other 21 nations have faced throughout this process, we are in really good shape. I'm very happy that we're number 20-something instead of number 1, because we get to learn all the lessons.
I only ask that from the backdrop of many things that happen in this country. So for example, there's a library in Airport close to the Zenith Bank that is for children. Some of us spoke about it for a while. It was opened, launched, if you like, and whenever I pass there, it is empty. Again, nobody is there. So I don't see it running. I get that. I'm only using that as an example. So as we seek to actualize this, I'm supposing those are areas where, because it's in a sprawling community, we can do a lot more to ensure that the same things you're talking about, kids having access and rather choosing to read instead of engaging in any other vices, that would actually be actualized, so to speak. But so in the course of this year, can you give us a breakdown of what the plans are, what we're going to be doing from the 24th, when Mr. President, sets the tone for this at the Accra International Conference Center?
Yes, please, at the Accra.
To when? When next year, or when at the end of this year?
No, April 23rd. So
April 23rd.
So April 23rd is the World Publishers Day, and so that's when we usually.
So in the next year.
Yes. So the reason why it doesn't start in January is that April 23rd is World Publishing Day, right? And so what we did, what UNESCO does is that we almost always kick off on the 23rd. Only issues the 23rd this year is on a Sunday. And so we're going to go immediately on the 24th and go all the way to the next year. The Strasbourg, so Accra is going to be handing over to Strasbourg in April of 2024. So it's going to go across for a whole nother 365 days, right? And so some of the things that we'll be having are cultural fairs. So again, I also want to make sure that I really do talk about our leadership from the Ministry of Culture and Tourism, because it's not just Education Ministry who's taking the lead on this. It's interministerial. Obviously, we have a lot of different people coming in. Matter of fact, before I forget, I have to say hello to the mayor of Accra, Her Excellency, because she's a major part of this process. AMA is a major part of this process too. With that being said, we're talking about culture fairs. We're talking about revitalizing some of the libraries and issues that we were discussed, right? You don't have to keep building new ones if you have the ones that are already there, right? We're talking about engaging with community members and community advocacy programs. We're talking about using continuing education agency to support those individuals who are not in school already and are not reading. So there's a long, giant list of things that we're going to be happening every week or so throughout the year. And I could send you that breakdown later. But if I sat here and listed everything, we wouldn't get off the air.
I get the point. The government has committed, though, to implement sustainable solutions, including digitalization or digitization,
exactly.
basically. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
So really simply, This thing is physical, right? And I could get it wet and it could fall apart. It could do A, B, C, and D. What you're working on, and they can't see your laptop, but it's there, right? You're working on something that's digitized, that can stay around forever. And so that's part of the process there. Don't want to get into the technical ins and outs of it all, but our goal is to digitize as many of our traditional books and our like our folk tales and things of that nature as humanly possible. To also, the thing about digitization too allows us to do things at a distance, and it makes it easier for us, and it ends up costing less. We need to be more efficient with our money, and when I say we, I mean the world. This isn't a Ghana issue. This isn't Africa issue. It's about the whole world. If you have a million Ghana cities, there's you can print a bunch of books and destroy a bunch of trees, and you'll get your books people will read, or you can spend the money on consultants who digitize so people can see it anywhere and everywhere.
So in terms of what boons we can gain from this, you've already started mentioning some of them, but to the ordinary Ghanaian who is watching us right now and thinking, okay, it all sounds very interesting. How at the end of April next year would Ghana have benefited from all of this? What are the potential rewards, apart from having this World Cup of, reading or book reading in Ghana for the next
I like that. I think
year.
There's a big, I love the word sustainable because this is more long-term than short-term, right? So first of all, we're going to have a stronger book writing and publishing industry. We're going to be in a position where we're not facing cultural colonialism. The British don't live here anymore, right? They don't put us on slave ships anymore, but we behave and act in a certain way that may be against what we have done in our own cultures forever, right? So that's number one. This is a spark or to rejuvenate that feeling of Ghanaian culture, especially in the written word. And living in the world that we live in today, if it isn't written down, it doesn't exist, right? So that's number one. And actually, in addition to that, let's talk about things like our actual writers and authors and publishers. There's so many Ghanaians out there who want to be journalists, publishers, writers, authors who are like, this is not a viable job for me. But what if the publishing business gets that boom that we're discussing? What if the influx of capital and influx of support and technical assistance allows you to now have that job and create more, which it will? And also, let's talk about individuals with disabilities, individuals where we are going to be able to digitize certain content so it can support certain people. We will be able to create certain content and do audiobooks and things of that nature for an individual who may not be able to see to read, right? So those are some boons that we can definitely look for. And then let's talk about the social and economic transformation as far as it comes to culture and the industry of culture, right? Because your films are your industry. We know about Bollywood and Nollywood and the rest, but what are we going to do and how can we have that support here? So when we are doing these kickoff events and we're doing all the events throughout the year, we're inviting the film industry. We're inviting the TV people. That's why I'm on here, to say, come on, come see what's happening here so that we can grow these industries. And also, at the end of the day, there's something about being able to project out. You see? I mentioned the fact that I grew up in the United States, and I remember being so proud of people like Azuma Nelson as a Ghanaian living outside. Now, because he was on TV boxing, there's certain individuals, you mention the name, and you're like, I'm proud to be Ghanaian because of that. There's going to be a connection with the diaspora. Now, guess what? If we're able to push these books, these movies, these cultural things out to Ghanaians outside of Ghana, to African Americans who want to come to Ghana, that is a gigantic boom towards tourism also.
Well, Aaron, it's been invigorating, basically. Anything about books. In fact, tomorrow, I'm participating in a readathon. I am a reading marathon somewhere in La, and I'm moderating one of the readings. So who knows? We've already kickstarted it ahead of you guys.
Wonderful. Now the thing is, you said somewhere in La. You should tell me. I might want to come.
Oh yeah.
Tell everybody so I can show up.
So here's the thing. I'm still getting details, but I know it's in La. I don't know the specific venue, but I know it's in La. So maybe when I get the details, I'll share with you as well. Yeah, so maybe we could meet that.
And there was one last piece, if I have a second left.
Go ahead.
I did want to talk about the physical construction of our reading and creative writing facility in Greater Accra. So we are going to build an actual facility. I know the Ghanaians really like the thing, want to see it.
Yeah.
And so the average Ghanaian will be able to have the tangible place there where we're going to be treating it like our STEM centers, where students and families and communities can come in and out of those, out of that facility. And so hopefully that can kickstart a larger process and push more infrastructure into those community centers. So again, that young people will have something positive to do as opposed to, well, we already talked about it.
Engaging in vices. Well, thank you so much, Aaron. Aaron Chum Akwabwa is Director of Strategy and Innovation at the Ministry of Education. He joined us, and it's all talk about Ghana being the World Book Capital for 2023. It's here. So how about we tap into it and make the most of that opportunity? Thank you, Aaron, for coming. All right, so we're joined by Eugene Osei-Tutu. He's going to give us all the scoop on the Love FM Primary School quiz. Eugene, if you can hear me, what's the latest as we gear up for the finals today?
Yes, good morning, and good morning to your lovely listeners. So we from Kumasi are ready for the Love FM Primary School quiz, where the final is happening today at the Life Event Center at the Kumasi City Mall at 2 p.m. And it will be live on Joy Learning, on Joy Prime, and also on Love FM LUV 99.5 Facebook pages, and also the radio frequency. So the finals are between three schools. Divine Mission Academy, which if I'm giving you a bit history about them, they've been first runner-up before. Last year, they were in the semi-finals. There's also Mana International School. They're actually the defending champions from last year. And they're in the finals again. It tells you about how formidable they are. Then there's a new Western who came into the competition just this year, and they're in the final. That is Martha Davy Basic School. So these are the three schools that are going into the finals today, and they'll be battling at 2 p.m. at the KCM, the Kumasi City Mall Life Event Center.
I know it's going to be all about bragging rights at the primary level, but when you look at the trajectory of these schools, which ones, I mean, they've made it to the finals, but which one really stands out? Some of these are past winners. Mana is the immediate past winner. Give us a bit of what the expectations are, what the projections are.
Well, I think that because I'm the producer of the show, it will be difficult to give a favorite and all that. But I'm giving a bit of a contest. Mana is very good and formidable. They were seeded when we were doing the audition. So at the preliminary round, they were very, below par. When you listen to their teachers, they've been complained about how their performance was in the preliminary stage. But at the quarterfinals and the semifinals, they really upped their game, and they were really the Mana that you know from last year. For Martha Davy, there's been the surprise package, and I would say the dark horses of this competition. They actually received the invitation to be part of this program a bit late. So they came in out of the 45 schools that were auditioned. 3 were seeded. That is last year's finalists. Ray School 1996, Hansi Gold Community School, Mana, they were seeded. So 43 schools had to be, 42 had to be auditioned. Out of the 42, Martha Davy, which is in the final, placed 32nd.
Wow.
And 36 were picked. So meaning that, yes, they're actually done well. For you to place 32 out of 36 schools that progress to the prelims and to go to the final tells you that they actually, the dark horse. If it's the World Cup, we say maybe they are the Morocco of the Love FM Primary School Queens.
So that means they've done a whole lot of work, but at the same time, they are the underdogs. They are the dark horse in this race.
Exactly. And just like the Champions League, every competition recognizes winners. So Mana is there. Then again, a school that has also been to the finals before and actually was the first runner-up is also there. That is Divine Mission Academy. And they were there in the semi-finals last year. So it's a keen contest. We can't really predict what will happen because all the schools come with, their own strength and all that. So we have about 3 rounds. The round 1 is about spelling bee. The round 2 is basically about general knowledge and we have an element of Ghana man's questions where it's exciting because as kids, we have to not lose track of our tradition, customs, and our ethos. So we make sure that we put in some key questions in there. And it's very fun to watch. The round 3 is where we do the riddles. Then we also have a speed round where each school has a minute to answer 5 questions. So basically, this is the rundown for the competition. And I think that's very key. And let's see what happens by 4 p.m.
So all roads lead to that event center as we host the finals of the Love FM Primary Schools quiz. Finally, what can those who will be trooping to that center to watch this event, those who will be watching it live on television, what can they expect? Fireworks?
Yes, exactly. Fireworks. These are fiery young brains between the ages of 9 and 12. And trust you me, some of the questions that, though we are the producers, we've been to the university and all that, sometimes you are amazed at the dexterity that they bring to bear, the intellect and all that. And if you are not careful, Charlie, it puts you on a toe. I'm actually schooling because you have to research, you have to go through their syllables and all that, study their curriculum. And they're amazing. The brains with which they answer some of these. And some of them, for example, the riddles. In the last contest, before even the quizmaster, and the quizmaster is the respected media practitioner, Rastos Asaridonko. He is acting as the AC Kaufman of this Love FM Primary School quiz. Before you even read the first clue, the school gets it. It tells you how well they research, how they read, how they are eager to get it right, the spellings, some big words they're able to. So for some of us, we have to get help from our dictionary and all that. So it's exciting, and I think anybody who comes to the live event center or anybody who follow the quiz on all the platforms of multimedia will really enjoy them. So they will learn new things.
Eugene, thank you so much for making the time to join us and whet our appetite, so to speak. It's going down today, the finals of the Love FM Primary School quiz. Stay for that later in the day. And that was producer Eugene Oseitu giving us the scoop on that. Now, welcome back on the AM show. We've spoken about Ghana being the World Book Capital, in fact, Accra. But from there, we talk about Waylead Properties. And we're joined by two special people who are going to be telling us about what Waylead has been up to. Joining the conversation, I'll start first with the one that you're not expecting on the show. Ochiame Kwame, brand ambassador, Waylead Properties. Okay.
My brother.
Thanks for coming. You're looking all white and kentish this morning.
Charlie, I don't have a choice. Made in Ghana.
Made in Ghana.
Yes.
And we have something that is indeed made in Ghana. Waylead Properties, ably represented by Alice Amankwa, Senior Sales Consultant with Waylead Properties. Alice, thanks for coming.
Welcome.
I'll start with you. Why are you partnering Waylead Properties on this? What did it take? I mean, your brand. What is it that got you excited about Waylead Properties?
It's, I started following Waylead Properties on social media. Okay. And I realized the impeccable nature of their homes. So I inquired about it. And then actually, I wanted to buy one of the homes, So I got my wife to call and we started talking. So I had the opportunity to look inside and I saw how spacious it was. I saw the finishing, impeccable. And I saw the human face that they brought to the management, interfacing some of us who are trying to do business. And the level of professionalism was so apt that we started talking about how we can do business to increase beneficiability. That's how it all started.
One thing led to another.
Exactly.
And now a relationship has been formed.
Yeah.
But tell me, Alice, what is special about Waylead that would, convince the likes of Ochiame Kwame? He's pretty picky, but you guys have been able to do something and you've got him out of that zone. So, what is it that is so special about Waylead?
Yes, so our properties are located in strategic locations.
Okay.
Yes, and then if you come to Waylead, we have the space, as he said. We have the quality, we have the location, we have the lifestyle. Our properties are sleek, and our furnishing is European standard.
Sleek.
So, yes,
your properties are sexy, eh?
So that is what actually attracted Ochiame to us.
Okay, so tell us about some of what, just break it down for us. I know you've been on this program before, you talk about security, you talk about other things. In terms of space, just give us a good picture of what your properties are. We're highlighting some of them right now, but tell us more about what they look like inside and outside.
Okay, so we have detached properties. We have Le Jardin Symphonique, which is a detached properties between, it's actually 3 to 5 bedroom houses. Okay. And if you look at the 3 bedroom, it's actually quite spacious because if you go to other development, you don't have it like that. Okay. We actually, the plot size is actually 70 by 75.
70 by 75.
Sorry, 75 by 76. You won't get it anywhere.
Because usually you would get 70 by 70, right?
It's actually maybe 50 by 60. That's what you get in most of the development from other developers. But for us, you get 76 by 77. And also, you can actually have another space. You can have extra space for other development within the same community or your boundaries.
So you mean there's more space within which you could develop something else in addition?
Exactly.
Yes. I see.
Exactly. And our rooms are spacious. The kitchen is spacious as well.
So let me add.
So that sets you apart. Yes, go ahead.
So for example, I live at two places. I live around Ajirgano, and then I also live at Le Jardin Symphonique, the garden of music. And in that garden, usually I will take my children out over the week, and then during the weekends we used to come to Waylead. But the children said they are no longer interested in going back to Ajirgano. Why? Because when they are at Waylead, they can come out of the house, they can ride their bicycles, they can play without the direct supervision of an older person. So that security and the safety of that environment tells my children not to move out of that space again. So for me, that type
So the kids have conned you to now make that your dominant,
It is now my predominant place. And beyond that is the neighbors. I mean, we are talking about space, we are talking about architecture, but for me, the human experience you get when you live there, when you wake up in Le Jardin Symphonique in the morning and the morning sun hits you on your walk, you realize that you are living the life.
Before you go, I mean, your contact numbers are rolling on our screens and all of that, and maybe you'll give us your email address or your website, I should say. But in terms of cost, how affordable are you? And when you give an answer, I would like to hear from Ochiame Kwame as well. How affordable did you find them comparatively to what you have on the market? But I'll start with Alice.
Yeah, so let me start from the apartment.
And we have just about a minute and a half, so very
brief. We have 2-bedroom to 3-bedroom apartment. And looking at the cost, it's actually $86,000 for the 2 bedrooms, and which is very affordable. Yes.
That's below what you would get across the market.
I mean, with all the malls,
you will not get
Accra Mall is...
They're actually giving 11% discount on these properties.
And the Dunkomi price, you are giving another discount on the Dunkomi price.
Exactly.
Okay, and then, if you don't find your way to Waylead, then
and then the beautiful thing is that if you can pay 20%,
right,
and then the rest will be spread for you over the 2 to 5 years.
Yeah. Yes, we actually have a payment plan. We can give you between 1 to 5 years, which is flexible. So after you've paid the 20%, we spread the remaining balance. Within that,
pay a fifth, and then you can spread the rest from 1 to 5 years. That's the way to go. Yeah. Anyway, we have to go. 10 seconds each.
Let me go first. So for all my friends and everybody who is living in Ghana right now, you know how volatile the city is behaving. Put your money in real estate. Real estate everywhere, even if it's not Alphabet City or Waylead. Real estate has done better than any form of investment in the last 20 years. But if you put it at Waylead, I promise you, you will not regret it. You can put it, buy, rent. You can buy and do your Airbnb. And for something like that, it's $80 a day. Times 30 will pay your mortgage. So come and speak to this beautiful lady and let's do business.
Alice, 10 seconds, let's go.
So I'm also talking about people who living abroad. Most of the time, they want to buy properties in Ghana, but they are afraid. They don't know what to go in for.
This is a secure place.
Yes, so it's a secured place. You have title. There's no litigation. So I'm telling them that the moment they see Waylead wherever, they should come straight to us. They can reach us on www.waylead.org. And then also, we have our lines on the
right. So thank you very much. Alice Amonkwa is a senior sales consultant at Waylead Properties. Also, Ochiame Kwame, he is Waylead brand ambassador. All roads lead to Waylead. Well, that's how we cap off the show this morning. Look forward to seeing us again on Monday on your screens. Bernice Abubedu and I doing what we do best. But up next, we have Joy News Desk right here on this network. Do stay.